All right, I believe we are live on YouTube. It is 1:04, and I will call to order the, what is this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth day of our budget hearing, second week. It is April 20th, 2022. If we could get a roll call vote, please.
Yes. Councillor Villarreal.
Present.
Councillor Rivera.
Here.
Councillor Cassett.
Here.
Councillor Lindell.
Here.
And Councillor Romero Worth.
I am here.
Thank you.
We have a quorum. All right, everybody's here. Approval of the agenda. I do not believe we have changes today to this agenda, so it is as you see it. Am I correct, Director McCoy?
Madam Chair, yes, that is correct.
Okay, if we could get a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve today's agenda. If we could get a roll call, please.
Councillor Villarreal.
Yes.
Councillor Rivera.
Yes.
Councillor Cassett.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, terrific. Thank you. We have an agenda. Chair's opening remarks. I just want to let everybody know we do have Public Works here today. There are, what did you tell me, Director, 6, 7 different divisions we need to go through, 6, and then we need to circle back and on the human resources and the community engagement city clerk budget. And we have the next 3 hours to move through all of this. So again, let's just kind of be cognizant of each other and the time, and that works on both sides, right? On the counselors asking questions and the staff providing answers. If you answer the question, you don't need to answer it 10 more times in saying it a different way. So, everybody, and we don't have to ask the question 10 different ways either. So let's just everybody try to pay attention to how that works, and we'll move along in the time we have. So with that, we have Director Wheeler here to kick us off, and your staff, I think, and I'll just turn it over to you unless Director McCoy, you had anything you needed to add at this point.
No, Madam Chair, we are ready to begin.
Great, then let's do it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, should we start the presentation then? Okay, and there it is. Okay, great. And then next slide, please. All right, great. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, members of the committee, City Manager, for being present. I'm Regina Wheeler, the Public Works Director for the City of Santa Fe, and I'm very proud to bring to you today the Public Works Department budget. To present the work of Public Works maintains all of the civic infrastructure in the City of Santa Fe. And it's a good way to think about that is whenever you're walking down the street, every bit of that street is planned, built, designed, maintained, and operated by the Public Works Department. The sidewalks, the stormwater drains, the pavement, the stop signs, the street lights, the signals. As you walk by a park and children are playing, Public Works is planning and operating and maintaining that park. When you go to a rec center where families are recreating, that facility is planned, operated, and maintained by the Public Works Department. We operate, plan, and maintain the transportation infrastructure for the city, which includes the roadways, trails, bicycle paths, buses, of course, and the airport. So it's a very large undertaking that Public Works manages every single year. We really, we do that with 360 approximately dedicated employees who come to work every single day to make sure that the City of Santa Fe is a safe and vibrant city to live in. We, I think, have made some really good progress in implementing the governing body's vision of a really vital, safe, and progressive civic space in the City of Santa Fe, and we'll continue to do that. Really appreciate your support and your leadership in that. Our team is completely inspired by your vision of a sustainable, safe, and multimodal city. And that's what we're focused on delivering. We collaborate with hundreds of constituents, probably every month and across it. We have an extremely high visibility to the public. We have a lot of communication with the public, responsiveness to the public, as well as the counselors. So we take that really seriously, and I think it's helped to make us better and hopefully help to have the results that people want to see in the community realized. The budget that we're looking at today is our operating budget. And there's a whole nother budget that Public Works maintains, which is the capital budget. So it's important to keep those distinct because as a city, of course, maintaining all of this infrastructure takes a lot of capital planning and improvements, and those are funded in various ways, as you know that we've been funding them over the years, and we'll continue to do that in the future. So there are some capital maintenance funds in this operating budget, but those will generally be peeled out for the GRT bond or separate allocations or legislative appropriations. But that is a very big important piece. Actually, it's a larger piece of our budget. It runs over $100 million a year that we're always managing in capital project improvements as well. What you'll find in this budget and what we're presenting to you is the budget that Public Works Department needs to maintain and operate this civic infrastructure at a level that the governing body and the constituents have let us know as their expectations of service level. We believe that this budget really will deliver on what we've learned from the constituents, what we've learned from diving in deeper to managing our infrastructure. And so that is the budget you see before you, the budget that we need to do a good job this year to maintain and operate and meet constituent demand for services in our city infrastructure. Another thing that you'll see in this budget is that, as you can see, Public Works is operating at over 30% vacancy rate. That vacancy rate is actually more painful than it might even seem because a lot of leadership positions are vacant. So everybody that you see here as a leader in the Public Works Department is doing a double or triple duty. And we're doing some great work, but it is extremely taxing. And so we will see a strategy in this budget where we have a four-pronged strategy to make sure that we have the resources to meet the demands of this community and make sure that it's family friendly, that it's safe, that it's serviceable. And that four-pronged strategy for meeting those community needs and customer and governing body expectations are number one, of course, working really hard to fill all of our full-time positions. We've been doing great work on that. We've brought some great people into the team this year. I heard Director Kluth mention yesterday that he's definitely getting more resumes and really being more successful at recruitment and hiring. And we are seeing the same thing. We haven't filled all the positions, but we are definitely seeing an improvement in the number of qualified candidates to our listings. So number one strategy for meeting demands is our full-time positions in the department. Second piece of our strategy for meeting demands is use of seasonal employees, of course, because many of the demands, for instance, in parks especially and at the golf course are seasonal. There's much less going on in the winter and much more going on in summer. That season does extend beyond just the summer break for college and high school students. So it's somewhat challenging to fill seasonal positions, but we do maximize that as a very important part of our strategy. The third prong of our strategy is to engage professional services partners to meet our needs. And we do this all over the place in Public Works. We do it a lot in sort of the engineering and streets area where we need qualified PEs of different types of skill levels and abilities to really focus on, say, traffic calming requests or DRT review, where we have vacancies right now. So you'll see that we're employing professional services there. We employ professional services to help us clean up encampments, to help us in the medians, so that we're using all of these pieces of the puzzle to make sure that we could be where we need to be to make those maintenance and repairs and operation activities to keep the city running well. And then the fourth prong of our fourth-pronged approach is our temp labor services. The state has procured a number of temp agencies to help local governments and other governmental entities meet their labor demands. And we have been successful at utilizing that as well. So it really, that's what you'll see across the public works budget, is that four-pronged approach to making sure that we have the workforce to meet the needs of the community. So that's my overview. I'm just really proud to lead the team of Public Works Division Directors that lead the 6 divisions that create Public Works. Oh, could we go back one slide? I'm so sorry about that. I just remembered something that I should point out. What you'll see in this high-level organizational chart here is a new division name. So you guys are familiar with the airport facilities. Parks and Open Space is actually a newly structured division. It was created, the Parks Division was moved into Public Works with the golf course in September 2020. And now after a year and a half of leadership, Ms. McDonald is officially our Parks and Open Space Division Director. We're so happy to have her have taken on this responsibility. And stormwater and the river have moved with her into that. And there's a lot of synergy there. So that division now contains parks, open space, trails maintenance, and stormwater and the golf course and MRC. Big division and gets a lot of attention. Parking is the division that you have understood it to be. Complete Streets is the brand new division name that is just being introduced this year. And that is the combination of the engineering and the streets divisions. And as it says in the budget book, I thought there was some really good words in there about this, that it combines the teams that engineer, design, and plan the capital creation and reconstruction of our roadway facilities with the team that maintain and operate those facilities. And it really provides for a really nice sort of cross-pollination of field expertise and engineering expertise. And so the team is really excited about this combination. Combining the 2 divisions also frees up a division director that we've been missing in transit. Transit's 2nd division director was moved in September 2020. And so this will allow us to reinstate that so that we can have a director of administration in transit. And this team, this Complete Streets team, will also have a capital projects manager, because we're managing probably way over $100 million of planned projects and roads at all times. And as you know, we collaborate with the DOT for funding as well as the legislature. And that's a huge responsibility, is managing all that funding and planning in those capital projects. So inside Complete Streets will be the team that does that. And just want to recognize Ramela Glorioso Moss. As you guys know, she has been really stepping up and helping fill gaps in this area for the past year and doing this really, really excellent job of this work for us. So I just wanted to point out that now there's 6 divisions. There used to be 7, and I think that combination will be a real win for the employees, and for the public, it'll be less confusing. It's a little confusing for the public to figure out where to go with a streets issue. Okay, I'm ready for the next slide. And then I think you can read this slide. It's basically, as I said, this budget will provide the funding that we need to maintain and operate this vast civic infrastructure in the city of Santa Fe. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we're using the multi-pronged approach to meeting the demand. So the Public Works Department Administration Division is under me. And it basically has the high-level administration of the department in it. It also has a couple of project administrator positions in there because of the allocation of those new positions in the fiscal year 22 budget. That's discussed here a little bit. That was we got 4 project administrators positions put in for the purpose of increasing capital capacity in the city, which was really timely because now, as you know, we have even more capital opportunity, and we knew then we had a lot, but now we have even more with the Infrastructure Jobs Act. And we've really successfully utilized these positions to create a career ladder for project administrators, promote 3 existing high-performing project administrators to be seniors, which has been really effective retention, as well as giving them an opportunity to take on more responsibility and deliver that value to the city. One of those positions will be converted to a capital projects manager for citywide capital planning, and then there'll be another capital projects manager inside the Complete Streets division for the roadway capital planning and deployment. And then just to say, the first couple of bullets here are that we are employing contractors now to assist us with traffic calming. Leroy Pacheco, as you know, is under contract. He's worked for the division. He's for the department. He's doing a great job of really fielding the requests, performing the studies, getting the answers out. So people are feeling responded to as they submit their traffic calming requests to us. And that team is also performing DRT review of proposed developments. And so we also have a traffic engineer under contract to perform what's needed from a traffic engineering PE. So we filled that gap, and I think it's working really well actually to serve the city with the vacancies that we have in that area right now. And I think that's all for Public Works Administration. I see there's Railyard here, and that is actually Sam Burnett's responsibility. He is wearing that hat still as the property maintenance manager, as well as the facilities division director. And so, Sam, would you like to talk a little bit about the Railyard operations budget here?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Regina. Good afternoon, Mr. Manager, counselors. The Railyard, this is essentially the Railyard operational budget. It basically covers dues, market station, maintenance, security, and kind of other basic operational needs. It's really focused on providing the best service possible to our constituents and tenants in the Railyard. And quickly, that is essentially what this budget is focused on.
Thank you, Sam. Madam Chair, would you like us to pause for questions on this section?
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe we should do this section by section. It's probably not a bad idea. We are, just for the committee's information, going to vote on the department as a whole for the budget, but we can take a moment to go through each of the divisions as they appear. Questions from the committee? Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few questions about Railyard Operations. Happy to see there's security in there. There's a $233,000 for Railyard security. So is there more of a plan for kind of concerted and organized effort with the security with our partners at the Railyard and possibly even beyond that in the Guadalupe district?
Councilor, or Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, we're working on a two-prong approach for security right now. We are finalizing an RFP for on-call security contracts. We hope to award 3 to 5 new contracts, creating more diversity and coverage availabilities for the city. And we're also in the beginnings of conversations for us in the Railyard. Obviously, our big partner is the Railyard Community Corporation, and how our two entities can work together to provide coverage for our various areas of responsibility to kind of increase our collective efficiency, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense to me. I think we need to do more of that, considering what's happening in that area with break-ins. And obviously, when you have more activity in the Railyard, there's less likely for those activities, nefarious activities, to happen. So that's good to hear. And $233,000 is only specific to the Railyard?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, that is correct.
Okay. And then a lot of us got emails about this. It's essentially the contract we have with the Railyard Conservancy Park Conservancy, excuse me. And at first I didn't understand what this line item was, but the 100,000, it says for horticultural care. Is that the contract with the Railyard Park Conservancy?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, that is correct.
Okay, so 100K, that covers that. Then there's an amount, I know that there was an additional amount that you all requested for maintenance. And so now the amount comes down to 378,000 for maintenance. So how much of that will be utilized or directed towards our irrigation systems / water harvesting?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, what we're looking at a plan to use our operational budget upfront to address irrigation and water harvesting. And then when we issue a bond or find another funding source later in the year, perhaps even mid-year budget, kind of recouping those upfront costs to allow us to pick back up on general maintenance. So I think we're strategizing on how to best cover that at the moment.
But essentially that cut from your original request for budget does make you all have to then scramble to find other funding sources to cover our deferred maintenance and irrigation, correct? I mean, we've been having this problem for a while, pre-pandemic, so.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, we are it definitely puts us in a position of actively looking for funding sources for that irrigation repair. That is correct.
Okay.
I think Director McCoy raised her hand on that question. Sorry, Madam Chair.
Sorry, I was looking at the spreadsheet. Director McCoy.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, to follow up on Sam's response, and I'm sure Director Wheeler can also add some color into this. We always work coordinated together to find the right funding sources we discussed last Tuesday for the right expenditures that the city has. So several items did come in through an operating budget request that were more appropriate for a capital budget or for, as an example, to be included in a gross receipts tax bond, a GO bond, or any other of the multiple funding sources, including capital outlay funding that we receive from the state every year. I know Director Wheeler has done an excellent job at coordinating through all the different departments what the needs are in terms of deferred maintenance that you had referred to earlier, and what the priorities are for the city through and what the appropriate funding sources are. So I hope that gives a little bit more detail to the teamwork that goes on behind the scenes as we try to determine what the best funding source is for the needs of our community.
I definitely think there's other funding sources that could support that and put like a piecemeal effort to it. It's just that this one has been deferred for so long that I feel like putting some funding that will actually get kicked in right away versus waiting for approval of a GO bond, waiting for funding through the legislature, that just takes longer and we can't even use that money right away. So that's my concern. So I'll hold it to you all to keep finding that funding source so that we can actually get things completed before it gets any worse at the rail yard with the vegetation. And then let's see, the other piece is we worked on this mid-year adjustment, but we keep reducing the amounts for special events. And while it made sense during COVID, because of the fact that there weren't events happening, we did another reduction from the 75K that we give for special events at the rail yard and reduced to 50K. So my question is, why do we do that when budget adjustments midpoint don't make sense for such a small amount? And the fact is there's programmatic stuff already in the works, already lined up, already contracts already set. And people need outdoor activities. We have been in the pandemic and we're here in another situation where we have an opportunity to match what's already been raised. We have an exorbitant other amounts coming from other different sources, grant funding, private sector. So I'm just curious why we just didn't keep it at the 75,000 instead of reducing it to 50,000. And I don't know if that's staff, because I don't know if that happened at the staff level.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I think I can respond to that. I think the challenge with the rail yard budget is that it has to be a balanced budget. Our balanced budget across the entire city, and that's what's been developed. Not everything that we wanted to fund right off the bat fit in a balanced budget, and so some things are expected to be funded as we gain more clarity, I guess, about GRT revenue in the future and potential mid-year. This contract gets established in early fiscal year 23, so that'll give us plenty of time to respond to that demand for $25,000 more dollars.
I don't understand why we just don't, since we have funding sources now, we don't just do it right away so that it saves our staff time for a very minimal budget adjustment than waiting till next year when programmatic stuff is already happening and events are already put in place. So I don't think that's, I mean, I hear what you said, Director Wheeler, your prepped message. I would just want to understand why we're not just making that change and just keeping what we had initially. Because when you look at this budget, 75,000 is not, that's like a drop in the bucket for all the other contracts and other maintenance requirements and other things that we're doing for this particular budget and other budgets. So.
Counselor, I think the question was answered. I'm not sure you're going to get, you know, there were trade-offs to be made in balancing the budget, and the prioritization was made at this level.
Well, I don't think this is a good trade-off. So I'm going to be requesting increasing it to 75K as an amendment to this budget.
Okay. Where are you going to get it from?
I can have staff decide that. They know all the different money pots. We don't. So I think it would be only fair that they do that work.
I'm not sure we have money pots and or honey pots. They're just, you know, it's a balanced budget. So there isn't money, to my knowledge, just sitting around, but I hear you. We'll see what, if any, options there are.
Sounds good. Let's see, Railyard. Let's see what else was there. There was something around Railyard Park infrastructure, but I didn't know exactly what that was for. It just said service contracts for Railyard Park infrastructure. Was that something different?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, the other allocation for infrastructure is for ongoing repairs and maintenance for, you know, if there's damage to the infrastructure, something breaks, it allows us to contract with vendors to make those repairs as needed throughout the season or year.
So that's separate from the maintenance, 378,000 for maintenance.
Yeah, this, Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, that's correct. This is more specific to infrastructure in the rail yard. So the city, it is separate. It is repairs and maintenance, but specific to infrastructure, which we maintain throughout both the park and the North Rail Yard Business District, you know, things that, you know, businesses are dependent on for operations in the rail yard, the electrical grid, gas, water, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. That's all I
Very
have.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Lindell.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one quick question. What are the dues? What are we joining? Or is it it's probably not for magazines? What are the dues?
Madam Chair, Counselor Lindell, those dues are our common area maintenance fee for our 25% portion of the Market Station building.
Good enough. Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Cassett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted a clarification following up on Councilwoman Vidariel's questions about the special events. So I apologize. So Councilwoman Vidariel had referred to budget adjustments. Can I have a little bit more information there? Is the plan essentially to start at 50 and then to come forward with a budget adjustment as we look at GRT? Is that my understanding?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilor Cassett, I think that's correct. We fully expect to be able to fund that at $75,000 by the time it's time to establish that contract early in early in calendar year 23.
Okay, and then in terms of the contracts, has there been discussion of if we don't get that money, what's getting cut from special events, or would that be up to Railyard Conservancy of what they do with $50,000?
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, there hasn't been those discussions because there is zero expectation of that occurring.
Okay, so if I'm understanding things correctly, we essentially have to wait. What I'm hearing is that there's a desire to wait for GRT to come in and it hasn't hit our bank account yet, essentially. Is that the way that I can boil it down?
I think that's a fair representation.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'll need to have my brain chew on this for a little bit because apparently my brain chews. I do think that it is it's important to have these activities and really feeling confident that we're going to be able to fund it at the full amount is going to be important to me. So I will think on this a little bit more. Thanks so much for the clarification.
Thank you for the question. Counselor Lindell, your hand's still up, but I think it's an old hand, so I'm going to go to Counselor Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one more question on the special events for Railyard Operations. So they have enough funding to get them through the rest of this fiscal year, is that correct?
Madam Chair, Counselor Rivera, that is correct.
Okay. And do we know how much that may be, roughly?
Madam Chair, Counselor Rivera, I believe we have currently spent down around $45,000 or $50,000 of the event funding for this year, with about $30,000 left to spend, is my recollection. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but roughly speaking, approximately that amount at the moment.
And just to clarify, Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, they were funded at the full $75,000 for this year. That was the size of the contract.
Right, so 30 to get them through the first part of the summer until this new budget takes place. So it looks like 75 to 80 is a realistic look at the budget. So just wanted to ask that question. And then on the on Prime Gov, there's the presentation. And then in one of the line items, it says other operating costs, and for actual expenditures for fiscal year 1920, it was budgeted at 2.3 million, and then the proposed budget for this fiscal year, or this proposed budget, is 172,000. Is that were those just one-time projects that were funded there, and we're not expecting those this coming year?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I had not taken over the rail yard yet at that point. Based on my understanding of the history, I would assume that was related, and maybe Brad Flitch is in the room, that may have been related to paying off some of the remaining bond balances. But I may be mistaken. It could have been related to projects, more likely related to bonds.
All right, is Brad?
Yeah, it's Brad in the room, because it's interesting, because it doesn't even look like that money was spent. Oh, no. In 1920, it was the 2.3 was spent. Brad, do you have an answer to that question? Did you hear it?
Yeah, if the Councilor Rivera could repeat it, please.
Yeah, so on the on Prime Gov on page 5 of 22, I think it is, it has expenditures, and it goes through a couple fiscal years. And in fiscal year 2019, 2020, the budget was 2.3 million. And then the proposed budget for this year is about 172,000. So just wondering what that money was for, and was it just one-time projects, or what else was it?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I believe it was at that time when we first moved into Munis, we were going to budget the debt service into the individual accounts, funds. And then they decided they wanted to change it to a bond, just a generic, a new fund for all bond payments. And then we moved it back. So I would believe that that's about the right amount for debt service for Railyard, but I will look into that and verify it for you.
Okay. All right. I think that was it for Railyard. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We're going to move on because we're already at 1:40. And I believe, are we going Director Wheeler to airport? Is that next? Or there we go, airport.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And Mark Baca, the airport manager, will present this budget.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. The airport budget we're presenting this year is, as everybody is saying, we're highlighting our services to the public and the airport users, and keeping in compliance with both TSA and FAA. We do have a couple of key items that we're adding on. We're adding a couple of, or two full-time employees, one in the maintenance division, one in the custodial division, helping out with with the upcoming terminal, and once it gets completed. We also are working on adding a all-inclusive security badging processing system, which includes our cameras and an online badging system. So that's pretty much the highlights. I can stand for questions.
Okay, great. Questions from the committee. Let's take the screen down, and you can always go back if we need to, the presentation. Okay, questions for the committee on the airport. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Mr. Baca. Just a quick question about that equipment, the airport rescue and firefighting truck, which is the specialized vehicle. So why is this funded in the airport budget if it's under fire? And if a bar is needed for fiscal year 22 that we're currently in, then why is this being proposed in fiscal year 23?
Councilwoman Villarreal, what we're actually, I'm pretty excited to say we actually found funding this year to get that piece of equipment. So that is our major without that, we don't have commercial service or any firefighting protection out here. So my partners or our partners with the fire department and finance were able to locate some funding, our current funding. So we won't be needing that in my operating budget. And Ms. McCoy is there for clarification.
Director
Thank you, Mark.
McCoy.
Madam Chair, Counselor, we also have Chief Moya on the line to talk a bit about this. This is really a strategic decision. The governing body will be seeing 2 additional budget adjustments for the remainder of fiscal year 22 coming in at the May 2nd Finance Committee, starting with the May 2nd Finance Committee meeting. We understand that given the supply chain problems that are going on, we need these vehicles, the ARF truck in particular, as well as additional police vehicles to be funded out of the FY22 budget so we can get a jump of a couple of months in ordering. That being said, I know Chief Moya has already, and the team at the airport have already started to work on this. So I'll defer to the chief to answer any other questions about the logistics.
So actually, it's not about the logistics, and I actually support this item. I'm just trying to understand why this is in our budget when it's a budget adjustment for fiscal year 22. So why is it being proposed in the fiscal year 23 budget?
Madam Chair, Counselor, this is not being proposed in the FY23 budget.
Well, then why is it part of the budget book?
Madam Chair, Counselors, this is an extremely important priority for the city. As Mr. Baca did mention.
That's not what I'm not saying. What I'm trying to understand is why is this in our budget book as a item for this budget, even though it's really just a budget adjustment for fiscal year 22.
Madam Chair, can I respond?
Yes.
Okay. As I was saying, Madam Chair, Counselor, this is an extremely high priority for the city, as Director Baca was stating. We are not able to provide operations at the airport without this vehicle, and this vehicle needs to be replaced. So our intention was to make the intention of the city and the priority of this particular capital expense abundantly clear to the council what the game plan was to fund this particular vehicle immediately.
I understand the urgency and the need, but I still want to understand why it's in our budget for fiscal year 23.
So Director McCoy, we're not voting on the bar when we take the vote on this department, are we?
Madam Chair, Counselor, yes, that is correct, Madam Chair.
So it probably
that
shouldn't
we
have
are
been in the budget book.
That we are not voting on this budget adjustment as part of this budget. So
Madam Chair, yes, you are correct.
Okay, sorry. So just to be clear, and I think Counselor, I think it was just a way of flagging it to our attention.
That doesn't make sense to me. I think it should be an item that we know it's going to be coming forth as an emergency important item for our current fiscal year, not in our budget year 23.
Okay.
So,
Point taken. Thank you.
and so the reclassification of there's a vacant parking attendant, so that's going to be moved to the airport maintenance senior position. Can you tell us more about that position, Mr. Baca?
Councilor Villarreal, it's we're actually expanding. I didn't know about the parking division coming over for that position. I thought we were creating a new position. And
Director Wheeler, can you?
Utilizing actual airport intern that was in here.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, Mark, Councilor Villarreal. There were a number of parking attendant positions that are not needed in parking since we have the automated system. And so as there's needs in other divisions, those positions are being moved to fulfill needs at the airport. And Mark is actually desperately needed to expand the maintenance team at the airport for some time. He's one of the first people in a snow plow. That's really not where we want our airport manager spending his time, right? So I think this is a good adjustment that we're finally making to give him a position for that maintenance and take it from parking where it's no longer needed.
Okay, just curious where it would be housed under. So how many maintenance folks do we have?
Currently, we have 3.
3. Okay. Got it. All right. Thank you, Mr. Baca. Thank you, Director Wheeler. That's all I have for airport.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, we're going to move on to facilities.
Madam Chair, councilors, Mr. Burnett again. So Facilities Division, this year our budget is really focused in on a few important things. One, we're adding some new custodians for new facilities we're bringing online. This year specifically, the downtown restrooms. We're very focused on addressing deferred maintenance throughout city facilities and have requested and been to date granted the budget we need in repairs and maintenance and service contracts to tackle that. We also have an allocation for the development of a substation in City Hall, and pretty straightforward, just very focused on improving the services we're able to provide city staff and our constituents throughout all city facilities. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? We can. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Just a clarification I'm glad there'll be custodial positions for the downtown restroom. And is that solely just for downtown restroom, or are they going to be utilized for other facilities?
Their primary, Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, their primary duties will be focused on the downtown restrooms, but our custodial staff is very skilled at floating from facility to facility as needed. So having additional staff downtown will provide us the opportunity to support other facilities as needed.
Good, thank you. We'll need that. So thank you. And I'm glad that we'll have that focus area, but also other areas will be attended to. There's a service contract. It says 315,000 in service contracts. Can you give us more details of what that entails?
Absolutely, Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, our service contracts primary focus are on 2 things. Fire safety, so our fire monitoring and safety equipment, like maintaining it, inspecting it, repairing it, and expanding it as needed. And then the other portion is dedicated to elevator maintenance.
Great. That was my next question. So elevator maintenance will be part of that amount. Is that just for downtown? Where does that then go? Elevator maintenance for our garages?
So the Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, the main elevators we maintain are City Hall. Parking maintains their own elevators. We assist with the library and Genevieve Chavez Community Center.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question about how many vacant parking attendants we had and where were they being classified to, but I just read it again in the parking division. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lindell.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to note that on an awful lot of these questions that are being asked, it looks like Sam Burnett's our guy that answers them. And I think you're probably wearing a bunch of different hats, Sam. All of them look good on you, although you probably don't want to wear all of them at the same time. But it doesn't go unnoticed how many different places that you're at right now. And it's appreciated. And hopefully we'll get some other people hired and you'll get a little break on some of this stuff. And just want you to know that it doesn't go unnoticed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you very much.
Other questions from the committee? Let's move on to Midtown.
Right. Madam Chair, councilors, Mr. Mayor, City Manager, Midtown budget this year, as in other years, the primary focus is on continuing to maintain the campus, partially focused, of course, on maintaining its value and operational capabilities, and also looking towards the future and making investments in those buildings we've identified as culturally or historically significant to the community. And beyond that, that is the primary focus of this budget, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Sam. Or Mr. Burnett, as we're calling you, with many hats. Questions from the committee? Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question again about the service contracts. If you could give us more details of what falls under Midtown campus.
Absolutely, Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal. Our primary service contracts at Midtown are focused on security, fire protection and fire safety, and landscaping. Councilor Villarreal, you're muted.
And out of the 471, how much is security?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, in the last fiscal year, I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but roughly $320,000. We have 24/7 security at Midtown because it is such a large property with such a large number of buildings that are uninhabited. We've really had to provide a fairly robust amount of security coverage there.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, good to know. That's all I had for Midtown.
Other questions from the committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to parking.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Noel Correa, the Parking Division Director, will present. Noel, are you unmuted?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam Chair, Councilor, Mr. Mayor, City Manager. The Parking Division's budget as proposed will allow us to fund the repair, refurbishment, and modernization of the 2 Sandoval garage elevators, which is way overdue. We'll also fund a contract for professional power washing of the garages. Additionally, it'll fund replacement of antiquated 3G single space meters we currently have on the streets to 5G, which is absolutely necessary at this point. And last but not least, we want to extend a contract we got as an emergency situation with a professional calling service to respond to all calls that are made either at the exit when people are exiting and trying to pay but have difficulties getting the credit card approval or whatever the case may be. So we are going to extend that for the next fiscal year. So that being said, I am open to any questions that you may have.
All right, Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question's related to the 5 parking attendant positions. Where'd they come from and what did they do in their previous roles? And these are the 5 that are going to or being reallocated to other departments.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, if I may respond, the
Yes, please.
5 are the discontinued positions that we used to have, manning the exit booths in all the 3 garages. And these were the ones that were frozen and unfunded at the time. Others were removed and placed in other divisions or departments that had critical vacancies or essential vacancies. And then that's how this 5 came about, being unfunded and frozen up to now.
All right, so they staffed the actual parking garages throughout the city.
Yes.
All right, and can you just explain for those listening why they're no longer needed?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, Mr. Mayor, City Manager, and the rest of the councilors, the automation of our garages with the new parking access and revenue control system is what enabled us when we had embarked on preparing the fiscal budget for 21 in 2020 during the COVID pandemic. We were able to reduce our budget because the parking division, which is a enterprise fund division, was not generating revenues due to the issue with nobody wanting to park or no one coming down to visit our garages. So that was part of the reason why we had decided to go straight to automation, and these positions became surplus.
In that automation process, how does validation of tickets work?
We have 2 types of validations. We have electronic devices, such as an example, there are, I believe, 3 issued to Violet Crown for the moviegoers to be validated, which is part of the city's contract through SFRCC and Violet Crown to validate patrons that go for movies. So we have electronic validators, and we also have little stickers that we give out for special events, as an example, at the convention center, what have you. And these decals then by the organizer's representative are placed on the parking ticket that people pull and get free validation, which is then which allows them to exit the garage without paying.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Mr. Correa. Just a couple of questions about staff. So how many staff do we have in parking right now, and what are the vacancies that you have?
We will have a total of 23. The vacancies we currently have are 2 positions in the maintenance unit. We were successful in filling 2 at the recently held rapid hire, which was very successful for the parking division. And so we also had 1 vacancy in enforcement. That was also filled during this rapid hire event. We also were able to fill a administrative manager's position in parking administration located at the Railyard offices. We also were able to fill 1 of 3 account technicians who basically do work such as providing cashiering services to the public when they come to pay for their parking permits and or citations, etc. So currently, our vacancies have dropped down to, please give me one moment, 3.
3. Okay, that's good to hear. Did we reduce the number of enforcement folks, or did it stay the same?
Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor and councilors, no, we have not reduced. We have always had 8 positions and 1 supervisor. We had a vacancy of 1, which we have just filled, and we'll be at full force in the next couple of weeks.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Sorry, every time my budget book hits the keyboard, it goes on mute. Sorry about that. For the debt service for the garages, is that what the debt service is, the 1.2?
Madam Chair, Councillor, yes.
Is that for just the Railyard garage?
Madam Chair, Councillor, most of it is for the convention center garage.
Okay. I thought that debt service was reduced, or was that the convention center portion?
Madam Chair, Councillor, if I could defer that to Brad Flitch, he may be able to assist answering that question.
Mr.
Madam
Flitch.
Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I believe it is the convention center debt service that dropped dramatically.
Okay. Was that a different bond? Is that why?
Yes,
Okay.
that
And-
was a 2016 refunding bond.
Got it. And then the portion that goes for parking, is that coming up for any modifications?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, that bond now is, I believe it goes until 2035 at this very reduced dollar amount. In FY 21 or 22, it was 5.1 million, and it dropped to 310,000,
Great,
of which parking only pays 30% of it.
great. Okay, that's good to know that it's separate and it's a different time period. Thank you for that, Brad. And then the elevators you were talking about for service contracts, that was Sandoval, Mr. Correa Sandoval, and what was the other elevator?
Madam Chair, Councillor, the two elevators at the Sandoval garage are in dire straits and need to be completely torn apart and rebuilt and modernized. So most of that money will be to do that one elevator at a time. Then we also, in addition, have a service contract with the same company that provides preventive maintenance for all three garage elevators on an ongoing basis. So they have a technician visiting the site, cleaning, dusting, checking everything is working, and oiling, greasing, whatever it takes.
Got it. Thank you. I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. And I just have a couple things. So you mentioned power washing at Sandoval. Is that part of the maintenance or is that separate?
That has been actually budgeted in our maintenance service contracts as part of that. And it's actually going to be power washing stairwells, floors of the Sandoval garage, as well as the other two garages, Convention and Railyard.
Okay, great. I have a constituent who writes me about that and they'll be thrilled to know that. Director Wheeler, your hand is up.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Noel, could you clarify for us? I know that we've been trying to put that contract in place and get it going for way over 6 months, but the contractors have been unable to staff and deliver services. Do you have some confidence level at this point that that will be forthcoming soon?
Thank you, Director Wheeler, Madam Chair, Councilors, Mr. Mayor, and City Manager. The answer is yes. We have an interested contractor. I think the hiring of or availability of staffing that this company's had a difficult time last year getting staff has improved. And so they are in a position to now take on added contracts to provide the services. And also I would like to add the total scope of work from the contract has slightly reduced because the parking division's maintenance unit is slowly getting all the vacancies filled. So we now have our own staff vacuuming and sweeping the garage floors which further reduces. Last year, we did not have but 2 staff members in the maintenance out of 6. So that was painful.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, and Director Wheeler, if you could just clarify, the contract you were identifying as being problematic was the one for power washing or the one for maintaining the elevator?
Power washing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
then
you.
Yeah, and then Noel, if you could just briefly also talk about you're extending a contract for, I think you said on-call services for people who have issues with the automated system. And could you just speak to that a little bit? How quickly they respond and how that contract works?
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilors, Mr. Mayor, City Manager, the contracted services that we started earlier this year have proved to be very, very successful because these are experts in providing such services to garage operations across the nation. And we are talking about big garages, airport parking garages, etc. This service, what they do is I get reports on a daily basis as to how many calls they get by garage, and also how long it takes for the call to be answered and the issue resolved. The call answering to date, the average has been about 4.5 seconds, and the call is answered, and the issue is resolved because we have given them a list of what they can do based upon our experience, what difficulties people normally have when they call. And they can quickly go straight to that particular issue. We have given them a script and they follow the instructions and get the information we need. Like, for example, if someone's payment is not working, we will get the license plate number and then the name of the person, and the gate is opened remotely by this call answering service.
Okay, thank you. Very interested in both of those. Director Wheeler.
Just a tiny addition. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. The way this call service is activated is the little button when people are trying to get out and they have trouble. And then I don't know if there's also numbers posted, but it was really important. People were not getting responded to fast enough when they were pressing that button at the exit. Now they get instant response and somebody can see what's going on at that site instantly and resolve it. So that should really help us out with this new automated system. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And I think the community will be glad as well. So thank you. All right, we're going to move on to parks now. And we have our new Parks Director, Melissa McDonald, with us.
Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, councilors, Mr. City Manager, thank you so much for this opportunity. We've been focusing to really meet our residents' level of service concerns. As Regina stated, this is always a priority in a maintenance budget. I believe we've come a really long way, but this year our budget's really focusing on building systems that will help us overcome some of our division's deficiencies and deferred maintenance. So you can see that we have significantly increased some of our seasonal employees, as Director Wheeler mentioned. At the parks, we're going from 8 seasonal employees to 20. At the MRC, we're going from 6 to 9. And we're just really trying to focus on having the folks that we need to get the job done. These seasonal workers will be doing weed removal, litter pickup, trash removal, helping with encampments, things like that. The other areas that we're looking at are weed control measures. We have a really exciting new pilot project, which is a steam weeder, which is going to be really great. And I can talk about that if you have questions. We're also implementing a trails assessment that will be done at the end of this fiscal year. And so we've added in some potential funding to take care of surface disruptions, crack and seal, that type of thing. We also have been doing a very important CIP condition assessment in all the parks. And so you will see quite a few areas in the budget where we have very specific things that we want to replace around playground equipment, irrigation controllers, signage. That's where you're seeing a lot of this increases. And this is really based on a critical, moderate, and fair kind of rating system. So we're really trying to be smart about how we ask for money. We put a lot of thought into this budget, as does everyone, but really this budget's targeted to really increase our level of service and that deferred maintenance. And with that, I'll stand for some questions.
Sorry, couldn't find my cursor. It's on two different screens and it wouldn't transfer over. And we got a bunch of hands up because this is parks. Councilor Lindell.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start by thanking you, Ms. McDonald, for taking this job on. You've been super, super active and super responsive. It's very, very much appreciated. I really enjoy working with you. Thank you for being available and always being patient with what are no doubt sometimes seem like kind of foolish questions to you, but you're always so nice about it. So another thing is, in the last month, I've had the opportunity to a couple of times play some GOLF, and the course is in terrific condition. I just can't thank you enough or how that has happened. It's in beautiful shape. So thank you very much. We've had so much fun on it, and everyone has commented that in spring conditions, it's just been amazing. A question that I have that I hear from people a lot of times is, well, you know, the parks employment numbers, we used to have like, I don't know what the number is, people say 100 employees, and now we only have 24. So those are made up numbers, probably as much made up as the numbers that people do say to me, but give us the real information on that, where we are with the number of employees that we have and how we're doing with that.
Madam Chair, Councilor Lindell, Mayor Weber, City Manager, we are doing okay with our numbers. When people often talk back in the day, they usually use the number 110 employees, and that's when we had a CIP locals crew, which was very valuable, but it was basically funded with bond money. And so we no longer have that. So I always like to correct people that they were actually using bond money to build projects, labor, that is. Right now we have, I believe, 63 employees. There are 9 now at the golf course. And today is the very first day for our sports complex manager. His name is Jonathan Weiss. I'm so excited about it. I'll be bringing him to you guys very soon, but that's super exciting. Within parks, we have in the actual crews that maintain maybe 35 plus or minus. The seasonal workers that I mentioned that are going to be 20 essentially equates to adding 2 seasonal workers per crew. So that's going to really bump up quite a bit. And then the rest is pretty much administrative staff, inspections from Stormwater Now, and our project administrators, as well as our operations manager, which has been wonderful to have a real team. I'm just thrilled about where we are today as compared to this time last year at budget hearing. I mean, we really have a team, so I'm excited about that. But Part of our philosophy is that coming out of COVID and having had a recent reorg, and it's a hard reorg to know because it is during a pandemic. The information that we're going to learn this year is going to be really helpful as we plan our next budget, which we may come forward and most likely will come forward asking for some more permanent crews. But right now, we feel this is the best approach.
So you feel like the number, what did you say it was, 100, how many, but that was bond money?
There was a locals crew at the time, and that locals crew was funded out of bonds, my understanding was, and that they were actually accomplishing project work that was not the way that we do it now. Now we actually do CIP with contractors mainly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. But do you feel like with that we got people hired early enough in the season this year, our temps, and that we're off to a good start with all of that?
I think we're off to a good start. We have more to do. So if anyone's looking and they're watching, please apply because we're advertising. But as Regina mentioned, or Director Wheeler mentioned, we have a three-pronged approach. So if we fall short on the seasonals, we are prepared to do contract labor or contracts, to accomplish some of the work. And in fact, we do intend on having contractors working on the medians in particular, because that worked very nicely to have that kind of balance last year.
Well, that's terrific. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for being willing to take this job on. I really feel the difference having you in that position. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Cassett.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I just want to reiterate, Director McDonald, you've really been just such a pleasure to work with. I receive feedback from my constituents all the time on how responsive you are and how much they've appreciated your work. In fact, I was at an HOA meeting last night and somebody raised their hand to specifically call out the work that you did on the Arroyo after the flooding. So I really want to thank you and thank you for taking on this position. I know it's a lot. Parks are visible. They're important. They are one of the parts of our city that we interact with the most, maybe besides streets. So I really want to thank you for taking on this position. And I know that we got a lot ahead of us. Councilor Lindell, thank you for talking about staffing. That's always a big one here, and understanding where we are with the staffing positions. I'm glad that we have expanded staff, especially seasonal staff. I know that when it comes time for weed season, that becomes really challenging. So I do actually want to hear a little bit more about the steam weeder, because I think that it is important. It's something that frequently people forget, that we do not use herbicides. We do not use chemicals to maintain our weeds, which means essentially that we have to have a lot more person power in order to do it. So I would like to hear a little bit more about this steam weeder, because if I am recalling a past conversation correctly, this could potentially be something that can help us mitigate the amount of actual person hours that need to go into taking care of weeds, and also allow us to continue to not use any sprays.
Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, councilors, Mr. City Manager, yes, we're super excited about this. It's a unit that you put on the back of a vehicle. It increases the temperature to above 200 degrees, and you manually spray it with some foam, and it will actually kill back the weed material. And it's pretty simple, throwing hot water on things, but it's really geared to make sure that you can target it and really operate it efficiently. So we're going to start out with a few parks and on the medians and just see if we have responsiveness. My understanding is that you kind of do this in just as you would going through the medians in a cycle. You'll have to go through a cycle, but that it is supposed to last 4 to 6 weeks, and it would be having benefits long going. So as you kill them, they don't come back. type of thing. So we're very, very intrigued. We did our research. We talked to a lot of other communities, but we're going to do a little pilot project, see how it works, and we'll let you know. I mean, we might be buying a couple of these units, I hope, in the future.
Well, that's actually, I have one of my weird fun data questions, which is how do we evaluate this? And so have you guys thought about how you're going to essentially be evaluating whether it's worth the money? Because if it is, you know, obviously that'll be something that you potentially will be coming back to us and we'll want to hear more about.
Absolutely. So I'm working with Victor Lucero, our IPM manager, very closely on this, as well as Nathan Seiss, who's our media crew. And we are going to be tracking everywhere we apply this hot water or this steam, just to how long between each one. Really, we've been tracking how long things kind of come up and down now. So we want to compare those two, chart those two, see what the difference in growth rates are. I mean, there is some variability there because, you know, if we're in a drought and then it rains, things grow more quickly. But we're going to account for all of that. We're also really going to be looking at what it does to the soil. Is it going to sterilize the soil, or is it going to keep it still alive? I mean, they talk about how it will keep it still alive because it cools pretty quickly and that microcelia will, regenerate. That's less of a concern in our medians, but more of a concern in our parks. So that's why we're really picking parks that we know very well, and we can really monitor that. As I said, I'm less worried about the medians because we often don't want things growing in the medians, but in parks, I want to be very careful that we're not causing long-term damage.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I look forward to hearing about that. That's exciting. Things that we get excited about at the city, weed control. So the other one that I wanted to ask about was the CIP conditions assessment. If you could go into a little bit more detail about that, I'd love to hear some more.
Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, councilors, yes, this has been a new effort. It's nothing rocket science, but it's just data when I came in, we didn't have, and maybe it had been done a long time ago, but we needed to update it and do it more efficiently. So what we're doing now is we kind of went through all of the parks and did an inventory and have been rating everything from critical, fair, or critical, moderate to fair. And, every month we go back now and we upgrade that we continue to see. Are there other things that are deficient? And then we write it down. So these are things like basketball hoops that are broken, drainage systems that need to be repaired, fences that have fallen down. There's just everything. You all know it. You get the calls. But this has been helpful in coordination with the CRM system. So we do want to, we're kind of tracking our CRMs, and we're tracking this, what I'm calling CIP condition and set improvements. So some of this will help us do our kind of operational funding requests, as well as identify things that are larger and that can be grouped together that we need to go for CIP funding. So that's kind of what we're really targeting. And we would like to actually in the future, perhaps get this all on a bigger than an Excel spreadsheet and actually have it on a database. But right now we just would like to actually get the things repaired for everyone.
I appreciate that priority of actually getting it prepared. My next question was going to be, is there a way that we can see this? Although it does sound like it does update on a regular basis. But I would agree that actually getting things fixed is priority. But I think at some time it would be really wonderful to see that, especially we do have a lot of constituents who say, do you know? And I'm like, great question. Let's find out if we know. And so having that ability to point them in that direction so they can see those things, I think would be helpful for them as well as for us. And I really appreciate that you guys are working on how you can systematically continue to do maintenance on the parks and on the parks equipment. So my other big question was covered by Councilor Lindell, and of course that was staffing. So thank you so much for going into detail about that, and thank you for being here today.
Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director McDonald. You disappeared on me. There you go.
Me too.
Just a quick question. I was interested about the graffiti section, and that you'll be increasing that or creating a team. So my question, and I asked this in ESD, but for the ESD budget, but they said that it'd probably be best to ask you. So they said they were keeping their team in place for their graffiti team. So I guess I was just wondering how your team will be coordinating with them, and then where you'll be doing something different. If you could explain that a little bit more.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager, that's an excellent question. And I've been working very closely with ESD to figure out the best way to break this out. But essentially, we will be taking over all citywide graffiti. I'm planning on working very closely with ESD on more of the educational aspects of it. There's quite a bit of education that folks need to understand, like educating stores about locking up paint materials that folks get, things like that. So really, we're going to take over the bulk of it, but we're definitely coordinating with them, and they've been wonderful to work with in the transition to plan this out. So we'll have more information on that, but I've been really meeting with them quite a bit about it.
Director Wheeler, did you have more on that, or was it on something else?
Thank you, Chair. My information is about the question that Councilor Cassett asked about visibility of capital. So if you want me to
Okay,
answer
so
that.
let's loop back to you then. Sorry, Councilwoman Villarreal. Councilwoman Villarreal, you have the floor. Sorry.
I was waiting. I was like, Regina's talking. Okay, so I think so you said ESD is still, they won't be doing the citywide graffiti removal per se, but yeah, I'm trying to remember what they said the graffiti team were going to be responsible for. It was education and communications, and do you know?
As far as I understand, Councilor, we'll be getting directly the concerns from constituent services to go out and remove graffiti. We are going to be receiving a new park superintendent for that purpose, and Director Wheeler and has also moved some parking folks over, so we will have the equivalent of that. I do believe that their administrative person is going to continue to maintain the educational aspects of graffiti on the Keep Santa Fe Beautiful site, because people are used to going there, and so they may get some information. What I don't know, and I probably need to get some more information on, is when you make a complaint, it's not going to directly come to us when you go to that part of the site, but we don't want to confuse people. And I think that we will partner great with this because we overlap in so many ways. And so I feel very comfortable with that.
Okay, sounds good. If you could let me know how that works when it comes to complaints and cleanup, just so we know if we get questions about it. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Sorry, the pictures now, I'm having trouble here. The pictures move around, and so I point my cursor and then the picture moves. And anyway, Councilor Rivera and then Director Wheeler, we can circle back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. McDonough, related to graffiti, I know in parks and open space, there are some really difficult areas to get to. So is there going to be any equipment requests or needs that go along with this parks and open space team?
Madam Chair, councilors, Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager, that's an excellent question. We have put in some requests for aerial lifts. We are going to be getting all of the equipment actually from ESD. We also have put in some specialty restoration work. Say if it were to be on something that more skilled than we can take care of, things like that. It is going to be a little bit of learning. I might be back at mid-year and saying, hey, this is more than we planned for. I did increase the budget somewhat to cover that. And I think we're going to be okay. But, you know, we don't always know how many people are out there deciding to, you know, do nefarious things. So, but we're going to give, I think we've calculated appropriately.
All right. So, you know, as you go through this and you find interesting situations, I think you may need maybe some specialized equipment. So just keep us informed and let us know what you need. I think this is a good move, but I think you may need some additional stuff as you go through. So let us know, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I'm also interested in this new approach to graffiti. I think it has been sort of complicated, at least in my experience with constituents, where they write and they say, hey, there's graffiti over here. And you got to go, all right, well, who owns the land? Who's the, you know, so you know who to call and what team's going to go out. And so I think the thinking around this to try something new in terms of staying on top of it, and also doing something proactive by, it is state law, right? That people under 18 can't buy particular kinds of paint. Is that true? Or am I thinking of a different state?
Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, councilors, that is correct.
Okay. And, you know, I think just maybe channeling some of this energy into some of our art and public places kinds of work too has been beneficial in the past. So anyway, I just want to add my my 2 cents that I think it's great to think about this in a different way. All right, so I think that's all we have for you. Also want to welcome you to your new position. Also underscore what's already been said. I so appreciate the hard work you've been doing, your responsiveness, you're just getting stuff done that really needs to, and just add my voice to the chorus. So thank you. I really appreciate it. All right, we are on to, oh wait, I was going to give Director Wheeler. Director Wheeler, did you want to, can we stop sharing really quick?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'm sorry. I just wanted to let you know that we understand that everybody would like more visibility into what capital projects are planned and what capital projects are funded and what the status of that is. And so we're excited to let you know that we are probably about 80% done with the new ESRI application that'll be available for the governing body and the public to be able to see what capital needs have been identified, little bits of information about scope, location, as well as what capital projects are underway and funded. And so it'll be a huge window into a very big part of our business that we all collaborate on, but it's hard to see from the outside now. And we expect to be launching that within the next few months. I just wanted to, I know it's super exciting. It's in ESRI. It'll be so cool. So I guess we can go to the next division budget, and I'd like to start that one too.
All right, complete streets. Director.
Yes, so this will be Director Tomas Martinez, who has been acting streets director now since Javier Martinez left some time ago, 3 years possibly. If everybody can see Director Martinez's screen, that's fantastic. Zozobra, I think he's sitting in the middle of a zozobra. That's just amazing. So this is, as I mentioned before, the combined complete streets division. And I think there's a lot of synergy here that makes sense. Also to mention, I didn't mention it before, but the engineering division was really quite small with sort of 20-ish employees, 25. So the combination makes a division of around 60 employees, which is the right size for a division. The main thing that you see here is an increase in this complete streets division for addressing our traffic signals. Our traffic signals have been underinvested in for not even just the last 3 years, but probably the last 5 years. We have super antiquated equipment on our signals right now that actually cannot be repaired. So we have at risk for having a signal and flasher for days and days, and if not weeks, while we wait for equipment. We're lucky the governing body, if you remember, funded a big chunk of this need in our signals and our street markings at the mid-year budget, but there is still additional that needs to be funded, and that's what's remaining in the FY23 budget. Another thing that you'll see in this budget is, again, with our four-pronged approach to addressing the staffing, the demands for services and the staffing challenges, the signal shop has been staffed at a level of 2 of 6 positions now for maybe 2 years. And so we've been, the new streetlight maintenance contract really helps that team because they used to do some of the maintenance of the city-owned streetlights. But we do need to engage additional professional services to offset that team's vacancy rate. We've been working with HR on new job descriptions, new requirements, how to structure that to try to get staff in the door in that team. But in the meantime, we need to make sure that our street markings, our signs, and our signals are all up to par, and that team is supported to do all the services that are required of that team. And then that's my part. And then Director Martinez, would you like to add to that?
Sure. I oversee the maintenance side of it at the moment, and this budget will give us the ability for the 29 positions in the maintenance side. We maintain 1,400 paved lane highway miles, 90 dirt miles, around 2,500 drop inlets, around 2,500 culverts. And that consists of us sweeping, grading, minor repairs and replacement of roads, minor repairs of culvert and drop inlets. We also have roughly anywhere from 15 to 20 new developments that are slowly merging into the city. And we also issue and maintain 3 different permits for right-of-way type of work. And this is all to assist in the quality of life for Santa Fe residents and the visitors.
Thank you so much, Director Martinez. I think that completes our presentation, Chair.
Great. If we can stop sharing the screen, I can see everybody. And complete streets, questions from the committee. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question about the combination that you're doing with the Complete Streets Division. And I think overall it makes sense. Complete Streets is a movement. It's also included in like land use planning. And so I guess my question to you is, this is dealing with the immediate needs, but is there a component to the Complete Streets that's also looking at long-term planning of streets and infrastructure? And how is that like working in unison with land use?
Thank you so much for the question. Thank you, Madam Chair and Councilor Villarreal. Yes, that's a huge, I'm super excited because I've been leading the engineering division, which is the team that does that planning and implementation. And since that division has been so understaffed, Eric Ani of the MPO, who is in land use and is another visionary in our Complete Streets and multimodal transportation network. So we've been working closely in implementing more projects with more sidewalks and more bike paths and more trails than ever before in a long, long time in the city of Santa Fe. So we are very closely there. I consider the MPO a key part of our engineering planning for the future for our transportation network. One of the small victories that we had that I am the representative to the city to the Cerrillos Road project, where NMDOT is reconstructing the piece of roadway between St. Michael's and St. Francis. And since there is no one in the engineering division, I'm a project manager in that team as well as a division director. And so I've been representing the city on that project. And we got DOT to change their design significantly to add a whole bunch more bike path, a whole bunch more pedestrian capacity in that project. So it's a huge, and that's why we really wanted to call it Complete Streets, because really only 4 years ago when I started here, it wasn't a huge focus of either streets or engineering to look at like really multimodal pedestrian roadways, right? That's what we need, right? Bicycles, everybody has to be taken care of. And that is a huge focus for the team now. They're inspired by it. And so we like to have that name to really demonstrate our commitment to that.
Great. I'm glad the MPO is that connector to make that make sense of what Complete Streets really is holistically. And for your, I think you said at the beginning, the other reason why you decided to restructure was the staffing of the leadership of one of the positions of streets. So you want to make sure that Tomas goes back to transit, correct? And then was this to consolidate the supervisory role for Complete Streets?
Yes, thank you for the question. It does free up a division director position for us to be able to reinstate the transit director of administration, which is really important. There's a lot of customer service there. There's a lot of grants. There's a lot of data analysis. We have regional partnerships in transit. We need to analyze our data, talk to our customers, adjust our routes, modify our system, and that would all be the responsibility of the division director position that was eliminated a couple of years ago that will reinstate with this extra division director position.
Great. Is transit presenting separate from Complete Streets today? Okay. Then I'll wait to ask that question. And then you said a little bit about the contracts. There's 1.3 million in service or contracts. Can you say a little bit more about what was on that list?
Yes, there's one of the service contracts will be for control cabinet replacement on the signals.
Right.
One of the contracts will be for support with locates. So locating services are provided by the team that doesn't have any staff. So we'll be having a professional services help us with that. Also inside this division now are the responsibility for DRT review and traffic calming requests. There's contracts for that as well as traffic engineering as needed. And then we did add something that hasn't been funded for some time, which is actual funds for traffic studies associated with traffic calming requests. So if it's a significant size study, we do need funds to execute that to respond to a constituent request.
So the traffic studies, that's for example, if a neighborhood wants to look at putting speed humps in an area and doing that analysis, this will go towards money for contract work to do that?
That's correct. Actually, smaller ones will be done by our traffic engineer that's under contract where they can set up the counters, but some of the bigger ones we'll just even outsource it. We'll get more professional services in to take care of a bigger assessment.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. That's good to hear. I think that's it. Thank you.
Mayor, your hand is up. Hello.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Wheeler, I have a question for you. If I am a resident of New Mexico and I'm interested in what Councilor Villarreal referenced as the Complete Streets movement, what other communities have a Complete Streets division in their organizations?
Thank you so much for the question, Mayor. From my research, I found what Councilor Villarreal found, which is that it's a movement. It's a land use perspective and strategy, but I have never seen another city with a Complete Streets division.
So we would actually be setting a new landmark here by creating this division and trying to bring this movement to fruition in Santa Fe, combining the different planning capabilities, engineering capabilities, and a multimodal philosophy. Nobody else, to your knowledge, has yet to do this in New Mexico.
That's correct, Mayor, and actually not in the whole country.
Wow. Congratulations. Thank you for setting that record straight.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't see any more questions, so we'll go on to our last section, which is transit.
And this will be with the multi-hatted Director Martinez again.
Yeah, that would be me. So this budget will fund 121 positions here at Transit as we can fill them. As you know, we're having issues filling positions, but that's nationwide. And that includes 13 fixed routes, a downtown circular, and our ADA curb to curb service. And we have five city sponsored events that we do. And this is a critical how could I put it? It's critical for us to be able to offer the residents and the visitors full-on multimodal transit for them to get around, for the people that absolutely need it and the people that choose to use it.
Okay. Did he freeze? Are we done? I'm not sure what
Oh,
happened there.
I'm done.
Okay.
I messed up. I had it in my mind and I messed up, so.
Yeah, I might have to pin your little photo there. It is rather interesting. You're coming out of Zozobra's mouth, it looks like. All right. I will do that while we entertain questions from the committee. Don't see anybody waving at me. Going once. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is hard to see you, Tomas, all the way at the other end of the table in Zozobra's mouth. So I know you're there. Just a question about your the fares. We used to have free fares for 18, I think, and under.
Yes.
And there were other subsidies for certain groups. Do we still have those in place?
No, we have since gone back to charging our fares, which is $1 for a one-way trip or $2 for all day.
Okay.
Having the free fare proved to be quite challenging with people just riding around. And it's been kind of a movement across the country where several transits have realized that free fare isn't really the way to go. We do work with several organizations so they can get discounted passes for people that are in need, and they hand them out.
Okay.
And that has seemed to work the best so far for us.
Okay, so there's still the discounted program.
Yes.
And then 18 and under is not free anymore, you said?
No, 18 and under is still free, and so is
Oh.
veteran. Yes.
So is what?
So is veterans.
Veterans. Okay, that was the question. Okay, veterans and under 18?
Yes. Yeah, the only change was general fares.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that. That's all I have for this, and I was gonna make a motion.
Okay, I saw Councilor Rivera's hand up, then it went away. Councilor, you all right?
Yeah, it was about the fares for under 18 and for veterans. So thank you.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure. Councilwoman, I think we are ready for a motion.
I'd like to approve the Public Works Department budget with all the various divisions. And the only amendment is to increase the special events for the Railyard operations to 75K. Since it gets enacted actually in it starts in July, which is our fiscal year 23. So there's plenty of time to wait for the other funding source that we were told is supposed to be coming. So I think that putting in the budget now saves staff from trying to do budget adjustments later.
Okay, I'm first going to ask for a second, and then I have, I think, some comments if there is a second. Is there a second on this motion?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, and then I did see the city attorney's hand raised. And I guess one of my first concerns is this has to be a balanced budget, which means what we say we're spending and what we say the money we have right now has to match. And our budget, as I understand it, is due to the state by the end of, Director McCoy, help me, May?
Madam Chair, the budget is due to DFA by the end of May.
By the end of May. So with that, we really can't do what you're talking about, Counselor, and I'm going to defer to the city attorney because I also think you have to identify not just some sort of future revenue that we may or may not have But I think you also, in this moment, with the money we have, you would have to say, I want to take 25,000 from somewhere else. In the pot of monies that we have today as we are passing this budget. And City Attorney McSherry, I don't know if you want to add to that or provide some guidance for us.
Chairwoman Romero, yeah, I just wanted to suggest that anytime we make a increase, that we should just identify where it's coming from, either if it's reducing another category, or if it's reducing our reserve, or if it's reducing another budget for a different department, something like that. Because otherwise it doesn't really make sense, because otherwise you're increasing expenditures without knowing where the fund's coming from. So it's kind of like, it just doesn't make sense as a motion in a budget without having a source of funds. It's like saying you'll spend more funds, but where are they coming from?
Councilwoman Villarreal, your hand is up, so is Councilor Rivera's. I don't know, I understand this is your motion, so I don't know if you have a question or you want us to go. And now we have Director McCoy's hand. So I'm not sure.
I just had a question. I had a question. I think Director Wheeler said that they would make budget adjustments at what point? When you said early fiscal year 23, that didn't make sense to me, because to me, early means at the beginning, July, August.
Thank you. I meant early calendar year 23. But I think Director McCoy can address those kinds of questions better than I can.
Director McCoy, do you want to take a stab at that?
Madam Chair, Councilor, yes, I can just provide some insight to what occurred in the Railyard budget this year. As Sam mentioned, the Railyard allocation for these special events, I believe that the total is actually $76,000 at the current time. Originally, the budget was set at $40,000, and then there was interest in adding to that budget because we have one vacant position, project administrator position, that's been vacant for the entire fiscal year. We were able to do a budget adjustment to move $36,000 from salaries to fund this contract. And I am seeing Mr. Burnett nod his head. And that happened within, I want to say, the last month and a half or so. And so that is an example of how at some point in the fiscal year, if we always talk about at this point in time that the budget is a plan. And then that plan may change if there is a particular position that we cannot fill for, or funding is available, or the priorities shift in the year as they did this year. There was a priority put on restoring those special events. So Madam Chair, councilors, when we talk about making adjustments to the budget, that's just one example of how that particular request was fulfilled this year. But that's one way that we can adjust the budget to accommodate the priorities that we have set forward.
So when
I hope
we
that shed some additional guidance, additional information, light on where we were at last year at this time, what the budget was originally set at for Railyard, and then how we were able to accommodate. I think it has been stated that these events are a priority for the city, and we hear that loud and clear.
So just to follow up on that, when we talk about the budget adjustment, then early, I think, what was it, early beginning of fiscal year 23. So are we talking about July, August that we'd know when there would be a potential for a budget adjustment? Because we would know more about revenues coming in. There may be some changes, like you said, in the budget with, say, some things didn't come to fruition. Is that what you're referring to, early in the budget fiscal year 23?
Who's that question directed to?
Director McCoy, because Director said to direct it towards.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, budget adjustments can happen as early as July. We do not, for example, we do not receive the first gross receipts tax report from the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department for the month of July until September, however. So generally, the budget adjustments that are done in the month of July are carry forwards for capital, for grant funding that are moving from, the multi-year by its nature projects, capital projects, grant funding. Those are usually the budget adjustments that we see in in July and August. When it comes to September, if we see the first round of gross receipts taxes overperforming or underperforming, that's really when we start to monitor that particular revenue source.
I think in this case for the Railyard events, it was budgeted for 75,000 and then COVID hit and then they weren't able to do programming. So then they were reduced the amount, like you said, 40,000, and then we're able to make up the difference. But the difference was made up a lot later and they were already scrambling to make sure that they had events that were already in place to be able to support those. And this is to create free events for our public, not because they just want to charge everybody for it. These are free events. And it's essentially the equipment needed to make these events happen. So I guess my question, it's not my question. My concern is waiting till December or January to make that budget adjustment. And that's what I don't want to see, because then it pushes everything back and there's no commitments that can be made for those events, which puts everybody in a quandary, including the people having the events, trying to figure out, well, we're going to have it or not. So that's what worries me, that delay. And I understand about budget adjustments and it has to come from something else. That's not what I'm trying to do, is like reduce something that we all think other people might think is more important. So, but I'm going to yield the floor for now to hear from my colleagues. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Wheeler, you said, or Director Wheeler, you said that you would find the funding for this at some point throughout the fiscal year. Where were you thinking about getting the money from?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, was that question to me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, could you repeat it, Councilor Rivera?
You had mentioned that you would find the additional funding for this as the fiscal year goes on. So where were some of your ideas for coming up with funding?
Thank you so much for the question, Madam Chair. Councilor Rivera, I actually had spoken with Director McCoy and we felt that there would be the opportunity to identify GRT. Actually, given the size of the Public Works budget, I would be happy to commit to making a transfer within our budget somewhere that it won't hurt any levels of service to fund this. I should have said that sooner. So I'd be happy to make that transfer right away to make sure that Sam has that. And that would be a bar or a T-bar. The bar would be signable by city managers due to the size, and the T-bar could be done by the department if it stays within the division. So we'd be happy to cover that with a transfer.
So you're talking about July, or are you talking about now in the budget?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, as soon as we get to the new fiscal year, we could make a transfer out of the budget within the fiscal year 23 budget to fund the Railyard event.
Okay. And then just a comment, I mean, if there's no flexibility in the budget, no really way of doing anything different, then really this is just an informational session for the last 5 days and going forward. So really not sure what we're really doing here, except just kind of listening and expected just to kind of pass without really making any, or giving any ideas or really giving any input, because there's no flexibility there. So not really sure what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Cassett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My questions may be moot at this point if, because one of my concerns was if the budget adjustment was going to come so late in the game that it was going to impact programming as it's happening. And I suppose that my question, which might not be valid anymore, since Director Wheeler mentioned that in July, once a new fiscal year starts, she can do a T-bar or a bar to get that money in. But really that conversation, this is a little bit more challenging because we are not ourselves, the city is not providing the programming. It is with an outside party, with the Railyard Conservancy. So I was just curious about that conversation and the interaction with the Railyard Conservancy and their ability to really let us know the timing of programs. I would also imagine that programming is more prevalent in the summer months. Am I correct there, or is there programming at the same level all year? So I know that was a number of questions all in one. And Sam, I imagine you are the gentleman to answer those questions for me.
Absolutely. Madam Chair, Councillor Cassett, just a quick clarification. The Railyard Park Conservancy is the entity that provides horticultural care in the park. The Santa Fe Railyard Community Corporation is the entity who co-manages the property with us and provides the entertainment. It's more complicated than anybody knew. Yeah. No, it's confusing. I just received the tentative schedule for the next fiscal year's events from their director of events, Sandy Bryce. You're absolutely right. The bulk of the events are in the warmer seasons or season. And I would be happy to forward that along to all of the counselors to take a look at, so you have a sense of what that $75,000 covers. There is a very robust event schedule, and it also provides a certain amount of that funding also goes to marketing for the events and the rail yard as a whole, as a point of clarification for you.
Thank you. And did Ms. Bryce send you a breakdown of expenditures and when those expenditures need to be expended per chance with that list of events?
Madam Chair, Councillor Cassett, I have not received the breakdown of the cost of the events yet, but we're still in the planning stages, and I will receive that in the near future. And that standard practice is to give us a breakdown of, how much it costs for a concert, to set up the stage, provide sound, or for a movie event in the park. It is all broken down for us.
Wonderful. And I would also, and also when that money has to be, if they have to put down funds to reserve their contractors, I imagine that full payment comes. So understanding what that looks like, where their budget is now, I think can help us understand when that transfer does need to happen. I am willing, I trust Director Wheeler in saying I will make sure that this money is there because it is something that it is of such high interest, even though it does not need to go out to us. I think notification that has happened would be really helpful. And Sam, I would really absolutely appreciate that schedule of events, as well as when you do get that breakdown of when funds are needed in their account so that they can expend them, would be really helpful to see as well. And I think just because this is such an important thing that we do have a lot of interest in, although the dollar amount is low, the value is high. So information that we can get on that. And so that we can make sure that if we need to come back to the table at some point and make some choices, because that's how I'm understanding this at this point. We do have a balanced budget right now with what it is presented. We do have the ability to make changes, but it really does mean that if we want to add something, we have to decide where it is that we're cutting. Which is challenging because that means, we don't have a finance staff to do that analysis for us. And so, and our current finance committee or our finance staff you guys have a lot going on. So I recognize that is, it's a big, heavy staff lift. But I do think that this is important for us to have that information on hand so that we can really look at that and make those decisions. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Chair,
Madam Chair,
Councillor Cassett, sorry, my brain is slowing down. I also want to just quickly point out that the way we pay vendors is, we issue a PO and it's reimbursed for services rendered. And, you know, if this debate, if we end up with an uncertain path forward in the immediate, like at the moment, we can always write the contract in a way that allows us to increase the size of the PO as more funding becomes available. So there are ways we can be flexible to ensure that, you know, we're able to allow them to move forward. They have the funding allocated in the moment that they need, while we make plans for how to, you know, tie loose ends together in the future. So a lot of
Okay.
options at our disposal. or tools.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And Counselor, we do need to move on. I think Director Wheeler has said she will make the necessary level of funding happen internally with the new budget in the new budget year. So I do want to draw our attention to the time. We still have two very important conversations or budgets to deal with. And so I will go back to Councilwoman Villarreal because she has her hand up. But again, we do need to move on here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couldn't find the raised hand. Just to clarify, Councilor Cassett, their programming goes from May to December. So it's not just in the summer. And so it's spring, summer, and fall. And there is a budget out there that actually breaks down all the necessary needs for and how that 75,000 is actually being used in the contracts that will need to be secured to be able to make those things happen. So there is information out there that you can request, and I think staff has that as well. And so now related to my motion, based on what Director Wheeler just indicated for us, I'd like to withdraw my motion and restate it.
All right, we also need the second to withdraw. Councilor Rivera?
I'll withdraw.
All right, so that motion is gone and we can entertain a new motion.
So my motion would be to approve the Public Works Department budget and all the division requests, and specifically for the special events budget to make sure there's a T-bar adjustment at the beginning of fiscal year 23.
I don't know that you need to put that in a motion. I don't know whether that's appropriate. I need guidance from either Director McCoy or the City Attorney's Office. I think you've been told by the director of this department that she will make that transfer. I don't know that we have the authority to do what you've just asked.
Madam Chair and Councilor Villarreal, if I could too, it may be a bar because I'm actually imagining that the place that has quite a bit of contractual services funds is the engineering division or the complete streets, and that would be, so it would be an actual bar signed by the city manager, quite possibly, but I'll defer to City Attorney McSherry.
Thank you, City Attorney.
Chairwoman Romero-Worth, I think that anything that's typically under the authority of a manager would not be on the agenda for today. So that would be really an operational choice that the division director has to make as a T-bar. So that type of thing is not in the council's toolbox, really.
Thank you.
Director McSherry, would there be then in order to make it kosher for the motion to say that we will reevaluate the special events budget at the beginning of fiscal year 23?
Chairwoman Romero-Worth, I think the types of, so the budget has to be established by fund and category and by department. And that's really all that's on the agenda for today. So any future actions other than budgetary votes are really not on the agenda.
Any future, say that again?
Any future actions like plans for what the governing body will do or what the departments will do in the future beyond setting the budget for this department for fiscal year 23 is just not an action on the agenda.
Okay.
I think we just need a clean motion to approve this budget, and then we can work on assuring that the funding gets transferred down the road.
Okay. All right, I'll be keeping a track of this. So I withdraw that motion. I guess I didn't finish it. So approve the Public Works Department budget and the division requests.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call, please?
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
and Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Thank
All
you.
right. We will keep an eye on that and make sure that it gets funded at the level that's needed in order to provide for the events that are so valuable to this community. Just real quick comment. I think as a finance committee, we absolutely, with 3 votes here and 5 votes at governing body, can change priorities, but we have to be very clear about what we're doing. The motion has to say, I want to add X amount of dollars to this line item, and I'm going to take it from that line item. And if you have the votes, you can absolutely make changes to this budget. So with that, we're going to go back to the human resources budget. I would like to, from the start, entertain a motion to approve this budget, much like we do. We have spent some time on it. We are familiar with it. And then we can have discussion about what it contains.
Would you say that, Chair, you want a motion?
I would like a motion to approve this budget.
So moved.
Is there a second? I'll second for the purposes of discussion. So we have a motion to approve this budget. There is a second. I know, I'm assuming there is conversation, further conversation that this committee is interested in having, perhaps further information. I will remind us it's 3:15. We do have this and one other budget to do today. That should be plenty of time as long as we're being cognizant of the time. So with that, is there discussion of this motion? Councilwoman Villarreal.
Madam Chair, there was information that we requested from Human Resources Department that was supposed to be presented, and that's why we delayed this. And so that's what I was waiting for. I don't know about anybody else.
Okay.
And also Councilor Cassett wasn't here, so I don't know if she had any additional questions.
So I'll let her raise her hand. Was there something specific that, because I think there was some agreement to provide information may have been provided directly to the counselor asking the questions. Is there something specific you're interested in? I think we can, again, we can have further discussion. We can provide further information. I just think I just need some direction as to what specifically you would like to know about. And
Madam Chair, there were things we asked the department to come back to. It wasn't just me.
okay, well, do you want to start off with
Yeah,
things you're
but
interested in?
they should be prepared to talk about the items that we requested.
Okay, let's start here. Which item would you like to start with in this conversation? Which piece of this budget would you like to discuss?
Who are you talking to?
You.
I don't have the
Your
floor.
hand, your hand, yeah, you did. Your hand was up and you were asking for information. I'm asking you to tell us, this is a big budget. What do you want to talk about? Which piece?
Bernadette has her hand up.
Madam Chair, if I may, I think the requested information from Councilor Villarreal was the bilingual incentive language in the AFSCME contract and in the police contract. So I can certainly get that over. It's actually on our intranet, but I can snip that piece out and send it to you as we're talking. Those were the notes that I had as far as your request.
Okay. Councilwoman.
So the other piece was about the down payment assistance.
Okay, so so we can go to the down payment assistance. What would you like to know about that?
So we had talked a little bit about why it was under human resources and in particular, instead of housing or affordable housing. And so I was wondering if Director Salazar could talk about the plan for, even though that's not your expertise in this area, what are your steps to be able to make this program? Like, how are you going to be able to set it up within your department, or is it going to be handed over to affordable housing to create the infrastructure?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I think this is going to be a multi-department effort to get this going. I think it's a really good program for our employees. So it will require the work of HR, Director Ladd, our city attorney's office, finance director. So I think it's going to require collaboration among several departments to get this going.
The one thing that I thought about later that worried me is that if this is under your department, then it becomes what's considered a benefit. And so then it wouldn't be able to be directed just towards emergency responders. So how are you structuring it so that it doesn't fall under like an equity issue? Because if you consider a benefit under your office, it should be applied to everybody.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I think this is one of the topics that we would have to explore with the city attorney's office to ensure that we're also in compliance with federal regulations regarding taxes and the like. So again, it's going to require collaboration among several departments.
I see the city manager's hand is up. Councilwoman, would you like to hear from him?
Please.
City Manager Belair.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I appreciate that. I'm actually just raising my hand to see if our city attorney would like to weigh in around some of the legal questions that were raised. Is that appropriate?
I'd like to hear from City
Great.
Attorney Sherry.
Chairwoman Romero-Worth, Councilwoman Villarreal. I think that's one. So in terms of having to offer it to everyone, I'm not sure that is the case, but certainly whether or not we would need to include it as a taxable fringe benefit is one of the questions I have, and how that would work. So I think that's just one of the questions we'll have to address. And we've hired contract tax counsel before to help us make sure we comply with that type of question. So or that type of regulation. So we would definitely do that on this question as well.
Okay. So I guess because not everything is fleshed out, it's a new program. It may not necessarily shouldn't be, or maybe it should be in human resources. There's going to be partners from the outside. There'll be service providers that would be able to administer that. So that's like another aspect of it. We already do it now with the Affordable Housing Office. So I don't see that as a problem. I think as I had expressed before, that this budget and this amount isn't enough anyway, but that it should be accessible to all staff, not just emergency responders. I think, as I had said before, that other staff is also essential, and we want to make sure that we get as many staff people as possible being able to live in the city. There are other possibilities. However, in talking with staff, I think we're going to have to look at other ways to make preference for that. We have a bunch of down payment assistance monies that go to HomeWise and the Housing Trust, but you can't put in stipulations that they have to give preference to city staff. And so that's not going to work out. At first, the mayor and I were thinking about, oh, well, maybe that's another way we could provide support, but that doesn't look like we could write that into the contract. There's other ways like marketing to city staff, but that's really superficial. So since we're starting off with only the small amount of 750,000 and it's only going to part of our staff, I would like to consider this a pilot for 6 months. And I say 6 months starting fiscal year 23, so in July. So staff has enough time from now until the beginning of fiscal year 23 to be able to work out the kinks and figure out the legal, if there's any legal issues, and set up the infrastructure. And there's already criteria that these nonprofit groups that we fund have in place that we can utilize. So I don't think we need a full year to figure that out. So I'd like this to be considered a pilot so that at 6 months we can evaluate and see how many people are in the program. That means they have to go through a training, which is a few weeks, depending on how long you want to, it's up to you as an individual, how long you want to go through their required training for housing, owning a house. So I just want to put that stipulation in here for this particular budget, since it's under human resources, that we would have it be a pilot for 6 months.
I don't know we have other questions from the committee, but I do think we need to talk about that idea. And I don't know who is best to address. Is 6 months the appropriate time? Would it be better to have a pilot for a year? We are in a budget cycle, so we can only really, we can't really say with this budget, it's a 2-year pilot. And then after that, we've got to work within the budget cycle we're in, which is 1 year. So I don't know whether 6 months or a year is a better window, and I don't know who should answer that. And I see a couple hands up. I'm going to go to the city attorney.
Chairwoman Romero, I would just suggest that anything that isn't an annual budget becomes a resolution or an ordinance that's separate from this, because really the only thing that's on the agenda is an annual budget for FY23. So if it's something other than an annual budget, like a limitation on spending funds to 6 months, or creating a pilot project that's separate and sets out parameters for a pilot project, that should be a resolution. Or if you want to do 6 month budgeting, that would be an ordinance change.
Okay, Mayor, your hand is up.
Thank you. I will take my hand down so I don't forget later. I think I agree with Councilwoman Villarreal that we should regard this as a pilot because we're trying something and we want to see how it works. Couple other data points. We had a discussion earlier about what the possible uptake on this would be, and to the credit of our fire union leader and our fire chief, they did a quick poll among the firefighters in the union, and it was a very strong response of interest. I also, as Councilwoman Villarreal has done since our last meeting, have spoken with a number of different folks, and one of the possible partners in this, as Councilman Villarreal pointed out, HomeWise is a partner already with Affordable Housing Trust Fund. They're saying that probably, given our housing prices and our interest rate situation right now, we're looking at something like a $50,000 assistance per person to help people get into a home, which means we have in $750,000 in this pilot enough for 15 people to participate. We know that the response on the poll from just the firefighters, never mind police, suggests a very good interest, which is exactly what we want. We want those first responders to be living in our community, so they'll be part of the community, they'll be accessible to the community, they'll be present on a rapid basis, they'll be embedded in our community. If we had 15 people participate, I would think that would be a very successful pilot, and then we can look next year at both expanding the program, changing the eligibility, and so on. I also, as Councilwoman Villarreal did, spoke with Alexandra Ladd about what we do right now with regard to our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And the response I got from Alexandra, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, and I don't think she's on this call. It seemed to me when I spoke to her that with the contracts we have, we can certainly indicate that we want our partners to track how many city employees participate in the mortgage benefit assistance that we make available through our funds through those partners. We can ask them to advance that as a priority. We can certainly market it as a priority. And so it becomes rather than an either or, we actually get the best of both worlds. We can say that because of the emphasis in our community that I'm hearing from constituents, that they really would like to see first responders close at hand and in the neighborhood as a demonstration of our commitment to public safety as a priority. This pilot can focus on that, and at the same time, the funds that we make available already through our existing relationships with our partners for mortgage assistance, we can add a emphasis so that city employees in general would become more focus of the funds that we're making available. I do think it will take a certain amount of time to get this program up and running and to give it a chance to succeed. And my goal, at least, is in including this in the budget, was very much to see it succeed. I want more first responders close at hand. I think the public wants that. I think our residents want that. And frankly, looking at that fire poll from the firefighters, I think they want it. And we did not have an opportunity to extend that same survey quite yet to all of our police, but I did send the firefighter responses to Director Ochoa and Chief Joy, and I think we'll get more data. It's a little bit of a back of an envelope data set. It's not a hard data set, but it is quite different from the original kind of opinion that was offered, which was folks wouldn't be interested. Quite the contrary, there was a very large interest and a very immediate interest to this kind of an offer from the city. So I see it as a part of an overarching package going along with increasing salaries, increasing the visibility of police through a city hall substation, adding more vehicles in the budget, improving training, a whole set of proposals designed to reassure folks around our commitment to public safety as a very important priority for this budget. We've seen all over the country a big focus on crime in cities. There's a piece in the Washington Post this morning that across America, people are looking at the rates of crime and the feelings about security in cities in every part of our country. And I think we ought to be cognizant of that as well. I don't see that the statistics necessarily substantiate the notion that across the board we're seeing major increases in crime, but I think the feelings that we're seeing across our community, not just in downtown, but in a lot of neighborhoods. And I've participated with Councilor Cassett and other members of the city council where the neighbors are telling us we'd like to see a focus on public safety. And I think it's very responsive to that request from our constituents. Thank you.
Okay, we have other questions from committee members. Councilor Cassett.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. So I did have the opportunity to watch the budget hearing the other day. So I don't have too many additional questions, I believe. I just want to reiterate this will be coming to us as a contract. So a lot of these details that I know that we are kind of going around in terms of how much and who qualifies and exactly why they qualify and what, you know, we will have the chance to really dig into that when the contract comes to us, correct? I don't know who I'm speaking to. Mary, maybe I'm talking to you, Bern. Am I correct in that understanding that right now we're allocating dollars and really that fine print, we will have the chance to iron over when the contract comes to us?
Madam Chair, Councilor, the intent, I believe, as was stated previously, is to work with a community partner to assist us with this. In the event that the contract with the community partner or partners, I guess, there are multiple agencies that could do this. If the contractors, the contract is valued at $200,000 or greater, that would come before the council again.
Okay, well, given that this is $750,000, and I believe unless we were doing, I can't do math, 3 contracts or more, then this should be coming to us. You know, I think that as Councilwoman Villarreal mentioned, this is absolutely a pilot. While I understand that we need to allocate the dollars for the entire year, I do also agree with a 6-month check-in to see how this program is going. And that does give us the option to do a budget adjustment or to change a contract if I am correct. If we decide at 6 months to change things, the dollars are still there, but can we change the terms at that point?
I'm assuming that Director McCoy.
Director McCoy, or if Aaron is.
Yeah, or maybe
that might be a city attorney question.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to jump in and maybe Mary will have more. I'm not sure. So I'm guessing we're gonna have to go to RFP for this type of a community partnership, or at least describe some sort of scope of work. So depending on which department it comes from, that department would be doing that initial scope of work. So those terms would be issued out to the public, and anything that's in the competitive solicitation or scope of work would not be something we could change. It could potentially be further refined later. But if there is specifics that anyone on the council is interested in defining as a pilot program, I think that could be done as a policy document on that subject.
Okay. I mean, I'm just thinking about our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and we just made an amendment to that contract to change the amount of down payment assistance given our housing market. I think we went from 30 to 80. And so it does seem like, based on precedents, that there is room to make some changes there. And I think the big question is here, you know, eligibility in terms of employment status. It does sound like that there are some opportunities there.
Counselor, if I could too, I mean, I think in terms of this committee, we can schedule updates on this program, on this pilot project, as it gets underway, to see how it's being utilized, what the interest is, just so that we kind of stay on top of what's happening. And that would absolutely be something I'm happy to schedule, and that we can, you know, kind of keep an eye and know how things are happening. So just, I offer that.
Okay, thank you. And then just thinking about it from the procedural standpoint, just so I make sure that I am sure of our options here. Aaron, we could allocate dollars in the budget and then come forward with a resolution specifying the policy requirements around said dollars if we so chose. So if we wanted to say, hey, we're doing a pilot with XYZ, we could ostensibly in the next 3 months before FY23 hits, put that into place.
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, yes, that could definitely happen.
Okay, great.
One point of clarification though, we can't in a resolution spell out who we would contract with. That has to be through the RFP process, correct? But we
Madam
could
Chair,
say, yeah.
Yes, yeah, I mean, so the procurement code would stay the procurement code. So just depending on what our procurement method was, we'd have to follow any existing ordinances, right? So and a resolution also wouldn't budget a different amount of funds, it would potentially provide guidance for a pilot project.
Okay, thank you. I think that it's kind of important that we think about where we have other opportunities to hammer out some of the details, because I'm going to guess that there's a lot of questions that and conversation that we will not, supposedly we have 22 minutes till we're done. So, you know, I've been thinking a lot about this particular budget allocation. It's been, it's a hard one. And I want to explain that a little bit, because to Councilwoman Villarreal's point, you know, to a lot of people's point, housing in Santa Fe is unattainable for most. I think I frequently throw myself in here where I say housing in Santa Fe is unattainable for me if I did not have family resources, and not everybody has that. And that is a concern for me. You know, how do we support the community? You know, so then when we talk about, you know, affordable housing trust fund and specifying for staff, the need is so incredibly great that it is really, it feels like an insurmountable mountain, and it is something that we need to continue to press on and focus on in so many other areas. And I think that that is important for us to keep in mind. We've allocated dollars to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund again, which is wonderful. And we need to continue powering through with finding an actual dedicated revenue source. And then maybe we still are doing, you know, other money with GRT, and maybe that money that we take we then can put into employee specific. What I will say, and what Mayor Weber referenced just a moment ago, I've had 4 community meetings in the last 2 months. And at those, the vast majority of topics have been on the lack of police presence in the community. And I think one of the pieces of this that I'm really interested in is not just how it, you know, whether or not, you know, this program brings first responders into our community, but also how it is utilized as a recruitment tool. We are at a place where we are not the only jurisdiction that is dealing with officer shortages, and whether or not we like to admit it, we are in competition with everybody around us. And I have really heard a lot from my constituents about that need. And I think the needs around public safety are great. And I think that they are multifaceted. And I think that as with many issues, this is not going to solve all of the various challenges that we are experiencing. And, you know, a lot of the work that we need to do around public safety and the work that the Community Health and Safety Task Force is doing, some of the work that Chief Joy has spoken to. But there's something to this that I think is really important. And so I am willing to move forward with a pilot program. I really want to be thinking very carefully about how this is administered and also what we are measuring. And I think that that is a really important piece, that we know whether or not this is actually successful and successful in all of those various components. And so I really want to make sure that we have that ability to talk about that, whether that is formed through a resolution, whether that is through the contract. It sounds like that's something we get to discuss later, but that is, I think, the big component for me. There are a lot of questions for me about, even within first responders, who would qualify. You know, does somebody qualify if they already live in Santa Fe? Does somebody qualify, you know, if they live 10 miles from Santa Fe and they're in El Dorado? You know, all of these different questions I think are really important, and we are going to hash them out. And I think we need to really be thinking about what are some of the metrics that we want to be focusing on that might not be immediately apparent. So I'll leave it there because I know we do not have a lot of time. But I also think that, I guess I'm not going to, one more. I think that looking at how we do work to expand this to city staff in general is important, because we have recruitment issues there too. And other governments have recruitment issues there too. And we are also in competition with every public entity around us regarding that. But I have heard extremely loud and clear from my constituents that there is a real concern around public safety. And I recognize that, but I think that as we look at dollars coming in throughout the year, as we look at increases in, as more GRT hopefully comes in than we expected, as we look for other opportunities, I don't know if there's grant funding. I don't know if we can work to get private dollars. If we can put the bones in place, I would like to see how this does really get expanded to staff. And so I am willing to start putting those bones in place and hopefully start to build a structure that is going to be more inclusive of the entire city staff. So I will yield the floor for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Lindell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to support this as a pilot project, but as someone who has worked in real estate as well as affordable housing, if we want this to be successful, I think we have to give it a year. It's going to take a while to get this set up. And I don't know if anyone here has purchased a home recently. It doesn't happen quickly. In order to go through the whole process of and it's not done until it closes. I mean, I can't tell you how many real estate contracts I've been involved in, and everybody's like cheering and getting party favors ready, and it's like, it's not going to close. There's a problem. We got to give this a year, friends. To do it for 6 months is not going to allow this program to be successful. And that's what we all want. I don't see the harm in doing it for a year. But in order to set this up with a contractor, set the parameters that we want on how it gets done, and take the time to do that, and then allow people the opportunity to have some time to apply, to be granted the down payment assistance money, and then find a home, get that home to closing. Can't do it in 6 months. It's not realistic. I really ask that you rethink that if you want this program to be a success, because that will not allow this program to be successful. When I worked at HomeWise, I sold 50 houses a year, 1 a week. At one point in time, I was the #1 selling realtor in Santa Fe. Maria was #2. I liked being #1. But you get something under contract, and there's a long time between when you sign that contract and when you actually sit at the closing table and disperse those funds and become a homeowner. It's more complicated now than it used to be. And I would really ask that you give consideration to how times are now as compared to maybe how it was when you bought your home. It's very different. And if we want this program to succeed, give it a year. There's no harm in giving it another 6 months. That may allow us to set the criteria for this program that we really think is important, and take the time that we need to put the criteria on the program that will allow it to be successful. So I'm sorry, I can't support the 6-month pilot. I'm more than happy to make the program into a pilot. And probably Mr. Lofton's correct. It'll take nearly $50,000 per applicant to make this realistic. They're going to have some costs. We're going to have to pay them some money. So, you know, if we got 13 people that could do this program in a year, that would be pretty darn good. But I can guarantee you, we cannot get 13 people through this program in 6 months. Promise you that. So I can't support the motion the way it stands, but I surely would support it as a pilot program for a year. Thank you.
Counselor, thank you, Counselor. And just to be clear, there is no motion to make it a pilot for 6 months.
Oh, I'm
that would-
sorry. I thought Counselor Villarreal had made that motion. Excuse me, I misunderstood.
Yeah, she didn't make a motion. She just is floating a time period out there, and I've allowed some conversation about whether that is the appropriate time. So thank you.
Okay.
Great. I'm just going to remind us all about the time. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate Councilor Lindell's perspective because of her experience. And I do agree the actual process from when you begin and it actually closes very long. We do know, though, if someone was interested in the program, that they were serious about trying to move and buy a house in Santa Fe, then they would actually put their name in and commit to going through that training that you have to go through anyway. And that doesn't take 6 months. So that's why at 6 months, we could actually determine how many people actually were committed to being like wanting to buy a home and going through the home ownership training from our first responders. And that would give us a clue as to how we're seeing things move forward and if there's actually interest. You're right. There's this whole nother process that they may drop out. They may not stay saying, oh, forget this. I don't want to do this anymore. And we wouldn't know that from a year from now, but we would know if there's people that are committed to like, okay, I'm going to do this. I want to sign up, make sure I qualify with the criteria and that I have to go through that home ownership requirement training. Because you have to do that and we'll have that criteria because you have to do that. So I still think 6 months is enough time because my intention is to see if there's interest and then at that 6 month point, actually determine if we can put more funding into this pot. That was the other intention, to have a halfway or a 6 month point where we are like, look at our finances, see if we can put more money into it, and then potentially expand it to more than just first responding. That was the intention of the 6 months. And not because I thought people would be able to get through the whole home ownership and closing by that period. And looking at the survey, while it gives us some information, it's worded in a way that it's not quite clear for me, because the questions are you a homeowner or renter? And 21% are renters. So are we looking at those folks wanting to be homeowners? And then it says, do you live in Santa Fe? And only 40% or 54% are not. And then the next question is, if down payment assistance was available, would you move to Santa Fe from other areas? But it's hard to gather from those questions to lead to this. So yeah, there's an interest. And then what's the next step? I just feel like the survey is real simplified so that the data really isn't telling us as much as we'd want it to. So I think we could actually get more of a better survey to get understanding of how many people would be interested. And yeah, I mean, I would like us to have our contracts that we have currently in place for down payment assistance to change them so that there's preference. But again, I guess the mayor and I will have to figure out the actual, what are our options? But from what I've understood is that's not our option to change it in our current contracts to say preference for city employees. There is another route that I can tell you about later. It's through our service contracts that we talked about at the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, not Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but the Affordable Housing Budget conversation, but we can talk about it another time because it's not pertinent to this conversation. So I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rivera.
Yeah, are we off this topic, Madam Chair?
We can be on any topic you want, I think.
Okay, thank you. So I also asked some questions of the HR director regarding bonuses. So out of the $300,000 that were included for this budget, how much is anticipated being spent for $15,000 signing bonuses for PD, and really how many people have taken advantage of that so far? And then how our vacancy rates have changed from 2 years ago to present.
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I believe the last time that we talked about this, the $15,000 incentive for lateral police officers comes out of the police department budget. So if I'm incorrect, Mary, please correct me, but I don't believe it's included in the allocation for the rest of city employees. As far as how many lateral officers have received the incentive, there's been 18 of them who have received the incentive, and 18 of them are still employed. Half of them received the first half, so they receive half of it about the third pay period of upon hire, and then the second half after a year of service. So 9 of them will receive it the second half, I believe in July, and then in early fall.
That's the retention bonus?
Yes, the 15,000 that you spoke of.
That was a signing bonus, right?
No, this is, Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, this is the 15,000 that you had asked about. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, but my understanding is that it was a signing bonus just to start employment here. Is that how it works? Half of it when they sign on, half of it 6 months later?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, yes, the 15,000 was an effort to try to recruit lateral officers. So it is only for lateral officers, and they do receive the first half about the third pay period when they get hired, and then the second half a year later.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Director McCoy's hand is up. I don't know if she wanted to provide more on this.
Madam Chair, Councilor, yes, we have $75,000 budgeted in the police department's budget for this initiative. And keep in mind that half is paid out in one fiscal year and the remainder in the following fiscal year. So that allows us at that $7,500 level to fund about 10 incentives for the lateral transfers.
All right, so half of it is budgeted in one fiscal year and the other half is budgeted in the second fiscal year?
Madam Chair, Councilor, yes.
Okay. And then the second part of the question, Ms. Salazar, about what were the vacancy rates 2 years ago versus present day?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, let me get that information. So right now, the vacancy rate for police in total is 24%, and for sworn officers, it's 21%. So let me get the data from the previous years.
Can you give me numbers of officers instead of percentage?
Yes, I can get you those numbers for the current in just a minute, because I just did the current ones in a percentage, but let me get the number of sworn officers that we had in 2020. I pulled it from November of 2020, was 144 officers. And then in April, the most recent report pulled now in April was 136.
Director McCoy, did you want to weigh in on this as well? Your hand is still up. Okay, sorry. Councilor Rivera.
So how many vacancies were we looking at in November?
Of 2020, we were looking at 25 vacancies, and the most recent report, we're looking at 32.
All right, so all these incentives and then monies, large raises, really has led to more vacancies than less vacancies. And I'm not saying that's the only reason, but we have more vacancies now than we did 2 years ago. I think that's all I had for HR manager.
Thank you. Director McCoy, can you speak to what the state did for police at the last legislative session in terms of, you know, I think somebody brought up that it's very competitive out there for police, first responders, and the state was also feeling the shortage, the vacancies, and did some incentives to try to attract more people to the state police force.
Madam Chair, councilors, yes, at the most recent legislative session, so the legislative session for 2022, the legislature passed and the governor signed salary increases for the state police officers at a 16% average amount.
Thank you. All right, Councilor Cassett, your hand is up. And again, folks, we're at 3:59. We still got another budget.
Thanks. Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, that was a very casual. It's 4 o'clock. No, I think that you know, just to follow up on Councilor Rivera's point that he was making, that's actually, I think, a really interesting question that we need to dig into. There's a correlation here, but we all know first rule of statistics, correlation is not causation. And from logic, offering people more money should not make them leave. So but there is a reason that we have higher vacancy rates, and we do exit interviews as people leave. We have retirements. And I think that this is a really important point that we should not gloss over at the moment. And this might be something that we take up in recruitment with community health and safety. So having that information, if you're able to give us information from those exit interviews, how many of these were retirements, how many are younger officers that left us. I think this is really important information that Councilor Rivera has hit on, that we need to further understand what the challenges are here and why we're having an increase in vacancies, and match potential solutions to the root of those problems. So Director Salazar, I see your hand is up. So maybe you have some preliminary information for this.
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, that's a really, really good point. As we were gathering this information, Assistant Director Ashley Barella pointed out the dates of hire for the several employees who have left over the course of the few years. And I think, Councilor Rivera, you probably know this, a lot of public safety employees are hired in groups. And so we have a lot of people who are eligible for retirement all at the same time. And so when we look at the reasons for separation, there are some people that, you know, clearly want a career change or maybe want to go to a different agency. But a lot of people are able to retire from their law enforcement careers. So that's a really good point. And so when we look at this, we see that there's going to be another wave of people who are eligible for retirement in the next few years. And again, they come in groups, and that's going to happen with fire and police. So I think that's a really good point. We can certainly dig into that a little bit more and provide some more statistics on that.
Yeah, I'd be really interested in that data of, you know, people who did leave. Why? Do we know if they were leaving the field in general? And also, we had a retirement incentive in place. When was that in place? And police, I assume, were part of that retirement incentive, correct?
Madam Chair, Councilor Cassett, yes, that was in 2020, and we did a report on that, but I will have to dig that up and get the number of officers that were included, and I can provide that information.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that this is, that Councilor Rivera is really hitting on an important point here of understanding what's going on is crucial for us to be looking for solutions. So I appreciate getting that information in time for community health and safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think the assumption is that I'm opposed to the 16% increase for PD. And though I don't like it, I think it's necessary. In speaking with police officers since for the last couple days through the weekend, unfortunately, I think we will lose some if we don't match what the state's doing. I think officers have told me that, it would be convenient for them to be closer to home if they went to Albuquerque or Rio Rancho. And so unfortunately, I think we're in that situation where we have to match what's going on. But what I wanted, and thank you, Councilwoman Cassett, for it, is to say that it's not just money. We're missing the mark. We've been throwing money at this for many, many, many years and haven't seen any changes. So we have to do something different. We have to look at it differently, whether it's benefits or something else that looks at keeping officers employed here in Santa Fe. I think we need to do something a little bit differently than we have been doing. And I'm hoping that that many officers apply and receive the down payment assistance for housing. That would be one way. And I hope as many of them take advantage of it as possible. But, I don't like the idea, and they've all been doing it is, throwing money at a problem and hoping for different results. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'm hoping we're getting close to a vote. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a clarification. So Director Salazar, you said you all don't collect exit interview data to actually help with ways that that would help to inform our retention policies?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, no, we absolutely extend exit interviews to all employees. They're not mandated to do that. We don't want to force anyone, but we do collect the data. And so that is a process, an exit process when people leave the city across the board.
But the data that you do collect for exit interviews, you don't use that for ways that would inform our retention policies?
Yes, they do. That's the whole purpose of collecting. That's one reason for collecting exit interview information. So yes.
All right, thank you.
All right, I don't see any other hands. We are past 4 o'clock. We still have one more budget. I would like to call for a roll call vote on this, please. And again, just to remind everybody, we are approving the Human Resources Department budget.
Councilor Vieira,
Abstain.
Councilor Rivera, Councilor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Cassett,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the last budget we have this afternoon, I would love to give Councilor Cassett a break before she moves right into another committee meeting at 5 o'clock. We do have the community engagement city clerk budget, and if we could get a motion to on the table for this, and then we can have discussion.
Move to approve the community engagement department budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. We've heard the presentation on this, so I feel like we can just go straight to questions from the committee, things you want to follow up on, much like we just did with the other budget. Councilor Rivera.
Thank you. I was waiting for information to come back.
Okay, specifically. I have no idea what has been sent to counselors directly, so it would be helpful just to know what you want to talk about here.
Well, nothing's been sent to me directly, and I think at our first meeting, you said Miss McCoy was writing down those issues we needed information back on.
Madam Chair, Counselor, yes, the follow-up for this was a commitment by the administration to provide additional details regarding the comp evaluation for the position increase.
Okay, and I just want to, before I'm assuming somebody has that information, I do want to go, is the city attorney still with us? This information, I think, is being brought to us for information only. We do not have the authority to set salaries. We are approving a budget with, well, maybe what I'll do is I'll just turn this over to the city attorney to describe what our role is here and where the edges are, just before we get into the comparables for the position involved.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee. The budget is set by category and department and fund. And so those are the primary things you're looking at approving. So certainly the amounts that are in categories is part of your vote on a budget, but the individual salaries are not.
Where are they in the budget, Ms. McSherry?
Chairwoman Romero-Worth, Councilor Rivera. They're used to build a budget, but certainly any individual salaries is set by their supervisor.
Well, they were, sorry, Madam Chair, they were never in the budget before because there were contracts associated with both the city attorney and the city clerk's office, which meant they were built into the budget. We didn't question it. They were already there. They were established by contract. Since they're not part of a contract, they're here as part of a budget increase. And you're right, we're not looking at specifics, but it is mentioned in there. It is pointed to directly as something that we're looking at as part of this budget.
It is called, yeah, it is called out. And I think, that was probably an abundance of caution to just because of the nature of these positions, not be seen as sliding something through in a covert manner, but it is something that we do not, there is no contract being asked for here. So it sets it into a different light. And we do not set the salary if there's no contract being contemplated, is my understanding. And please, city attorney, correct me if I'm speaking incorrectly.
Chairwoman Romero-Worth, I agree with what you said. I guess I would add it's similar to anywhere else where I think the budget department has pointed out what's included in a budget. We're not voting on those contracts that might be mentioned or the contemplated increase in a contract. You're voting on the amount that's budgeted in the plan that may be used on those contracts. And it's basically the best information we have now about what the money would be used on. And I think the intent here was to point out changes so that folks would be aware of what's included that's not included elsewhere or wasn't included previously. It's not about voting on the individual bullet points that contribute to the overall budget. I think the bullet points were intended to provide information about the plan.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilor Rivera.
So for the city attorney's budgeted amount, we asked several questions and several of the answers were returned, and that budgeted amount was approved based on the information that was returned. That's all I'm asking for here.
Right, and all I'm saying is, I think before we get into this conversation about comparables around this particular salary, all I'm saying is, I just want us to understand what our authority is here. And so what the information you're being provided is basically for informational purposes only. It's not so you can decide that the salary's too high or too low or just right. It's just, so you know what the universe looks like, and what we're approving is the overall budget. The
Well, I
mayor
hope
has his
the-
hand up. I don't know if you want to hear from him.
The budget that we're looking at needed to be justified, and that's what I'm looking for, is justification of the budget.
Okay. Again, I think we can get into the conversation. I just want us to understand where the edges of our authority are. Counselor Mayor, your hand is up.
I'm going to change my name to Counselor, so you'll call me Mayor Counselor. Thank you. And I think there's no reason to be at all concerned about the data and the information. I feel pretty good about what my recommendation is, my agreement with the city clerk, community engagement director, because I think, first of all, she does an outstanding job. She does a huge amount of work. The details of the job and the responsibilities of the combined city clerk, community engagement director is a significant series of bullet points. I'd be happy to itemize them if anybody's interested in what that list looks like, because I'm not sure everybody does know what our city clerk, community engagement director does, apart from making sure our city meetings are run and all the other work of the clerk. There's the additional work of community engagement. And if you remember back when we had this conversation last time, and the issue came up about the role and the compensation, I think I tried to make the point then that we have a unique situation with having through our reorganization created something of a hybrid position. There really aren't direct comparables, but I did indicate to the committee, and Councilor Rivera was the one who had asked the question, that there were some data points from other communities that might be instructive. So I am happy to run through those as just data points, recognizing that it's a information sharing because it's good to have information. So if you look at the individual salaries of a city clerk and a municipal director in Albuquerque as a individual and then combined salaries. The combined salaries of those two positions in Albuquerque is $248,057. Those are two jobs that our community engagement director and city clerk does both of. If you look at the county clerk and the community services director in Santa Fe County, and that salary of the county clerk, you should note, is set by state statute. It's not a market salary. Their combined salary is that combined salary of those two positions comes to $205,685. If you look at Rio Rancho, combined city clerk and director of public affairs, those two positions, which contain much of the comparable work that our city clerk, community engagement director undertakes doing both of those, comes to $175,936. If you look at our friends in Las Cruces, the combined salaries of city clerk and community development director comes to $244,418, $244,418. So the fact is that when you then look at what our community engagement director, city clerk does every day, the city clerk duties are quite substantial, including things that we don't always give her credit for, like supervising the public defender, dealing with issues involved with the Local Election Act, record retention, weekly meeting lists, online posting of agendas and packets and minutes, online posting of legislation, mailroom and publication services, things that are really below the radar screen for many people. And then you combine the community engagement piece of her responsibility, which includes the CRM system for constituent concerns and complaints, managing all of the multimedia operations of the city, dealing with our Spanish translation, language accessibility, community meetings, council support and liaison work, press releases, media relations, social media, multimedia, community events. You're talking about a job that really does represent more than either a city clerk or a community engagement director alone. And so we really don't have direct one-to-one comparisons, but the workload of those two positions is substantially comparable, if at all, if there is any way to do it, to the items or the positions I identified through Albuquerque, the county, Rio Rancho, and Las Cruces. So I'd be happy to describe any more than if you want, but I think those are similar to the question Councilor Rivera raised about city attorney and what other city attorneys make. Those are pretty straightforward one-to-one comparisons. This is a much more unique hybrid situation where we have a job that we created out of an effort to make the city clerk's office as I said in our last meeting, really the front door for all information, all constituent engagement, all council information services, as well as meetings and communication activities. And it is a very substantial workload with a great number of constituents and customers, if you will, all coming through the same front door. I hope that answered your request for comparables, Councilor Rivera.
I'm not sure combining salaries really did that for me, but there's no disagreement that Ms. Mihalcik, I think, is one of the hardest working people within our city. After our event, she's always there. It's easy for directors, I think, to put on an event and then put staff out there and let them do the work after hours, but she's actually there. And I appreciate that about her. And she's there for luncheons that we have for our employees. And she's not sitting at a table eating lunch. She's actually greeting people and talking to people as they come in. I don't doubt for a minute that she is one of the hardest working directors within our city. What I wanted was the numbers to justify the budget that was in there. And I'm not sure, again, that combining salaries did that, but I'm not going to hold this up because, like I said, I do agree. I think she's very hardworking and probably very deserving. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. I appreciate the response. I really do.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To follow up with my concerns, and I was able to speak with Director Mihalcik about it. My concern was these adding jobs, positions, and they're not necessarily positions that there's not a need, but what concerns me is then having more direct reports to her, which then prevents her from doing all the other stuff that she does. And so that to me is a concern. So then you have this like lateral structure and not a way to have others supervisors and structure it in a way that some of our other great staff could then become and have another ability to potentially supervise. And so I guess I would want to hear from Director Mihalcik about the ideas of what you're thinking about ways to structure it so you don't have as many direct reports.
Chair Romero-Worth, Councilman Villarreal, I'd be happy to go through that. I agree. I'm working on that structure also and really building out capacity for our team in a variety of other ways. But right now I'm working with HR to kind of do a restructure of our department. I think Mayor Weber kind of introed this idea unknowingly, but our department, my department, has gone through many changes, and we're struggling to kind of get everything in place a little bit, but we're getting there. So the idea is to have really the clerk's hub of things, which is our mailroom, record retention, agendas, committees, and then really focus on our communication, which I think many of you know, but that includes our social media, our press releases, our website, graphic design. All of those fall under my department. And so I'm working to create a hub and a structure for that through communications, and then also moving into the community engagement piece of it. And that would have kind of constituent services, the volunteer coordinator, the community engagement specialist position. So that that development of staff is there. That's something I really value and think we need. Additionally, I want to note that one of the first steps kind of in all of this was to actually bring on an administrative manager for our department. And that really has been a game changer. Isabella Sharp, who's also with us today for budget, fills that role. And she's really been the linchpin of this reorganization and kind of creating this front door. And that's part of it as well. Isabella really handles and oversees, our budgets, contracts, and make sure that a lot of our stuff is flowing. So we're starting to kind of work into this three area structure for our department. And I think that will really bring added capacity and also experience for some of our team members as well. And I see that already. Again, our assistant city clerk has really stepped into that role since I took the clerk position. As she's just really done a phenomenal job of kind of stepping in and overseeing more of our clerk side responsibilities. So we're looking at making more formal reorganizational structure within our department.
Thank you for that addition. The comparison for city clerk / community engagement, I think community engagement is different from community development, as it's different for our structure. So in Spanish, no tiene nada que ver, actually doesn't have anything to compare. It's like apples and oranges. So that comparison actually didn't help me. I think it would be better suited to say that we want to put Director Mihalcik in to equalize her salary with the rest of the other directors, specifically men. If you would have said that would have been a different scenario, instead of trying to compare these different positions that aren't really connected to ours. And so I appreciate that would be the situation, that's what we're trying to do, is create parity for our directors so that they're all more equalized. And even that is complex, because then you talk about experience and people's tenure. There's a lot of layers there that it's hard to figure that out. So yeah, I'll just finish that. The other question I wanted to follow up with that I'm still not quite understanding is there's $125,000 to continue the work of chart that's in this budget, yet the majority of all of the budget for chart has been in the arts and culture department. So Director McCoy had said that this was due to the fact that community engagement is under general government, but it's not. So can you remind us why this is still under community engagement?
Of course. In the current fiscal year, we have a little over 300,000 that is contained in the community engagement department's budget for the chart process. And I don't know, Christine, if you wanted to elaborate any.
I'm Council Chair Romero Worth, Councilwoman Villarreal. I'm happy to elaborate. Other than the budget has always been in my department, the project has primarily been overseen by arts and culture, and with support from different areas of my staff, including again, organizing certain trainings and also communication, distribution, the website, those types of things. But the budget has been in our, with my department, and we processed the contract for that. The extra $25,000 is what we need to actually cover our current commitment with Artful Life. When the resolution and contract were extended, it took us into the next fiscal year. And then the additional funding is a desired kind of continuation of anything that were to come from the chart process or any additional items that we would need to address moving forward.
Did you say that there was currently 300,000?
No, the budgeted amount was 226,000, I believe. Izzy I always mess up this number if it's 226 or 256. So Isabella might have to hop in to clarify for me. For some reason, I always mix up my sixes on this one, but that was the amount in the current budget for the chart process. And then through the contract, they've billed us $100,000 so far, but we still need 25,000 for the remaining portion of the work that hasn't been billed. And again, we work in conjunction with the arts and culture department for our billing with Artful Life.
Is that because of infrastructure needs? They don't have the infrastructure in arts and culture to do what you're talking about, these processing, paying the invoices? Because I think you all do the same. You go through procurement, right?
Correct. I don't believe it's an infrastructure. Originally, the budget was approved for our department. And so we work collaboratively with arts and culture for payment processing.
So just to simplify it, isn't it easier for finance than to just have it in one department?
I'll defer to Director McCoy if it's easier.
Madam Chair, councilors, I believe, and Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, the contract will continue, the current contract will continue through July and August, I believe, of the new fiscal year. And that's the amount that Christine was referring to earlier. I believe is 25,000. The additional amount in the community engagement budget we have put in to be able to fund in any shape or form whatever comes out of charts. We do realize that this is the beginning, I think, as City Manager Blair mentioned earlier, the beginning of conversations, many more conversations, much more focus for this particular initiative into future years.
Okay, so I guess that statement about the reason why it was here in this budget is when you referred to it as being part of general government, that was not correctly stated when we talked about it last. When
Madam Chair,
came up last time is what I meant, the last meeting.
Madam Chair, the general government department includes mayor, city council, municipal court, city attorney's office. It does not include arts and culture nor community engagement.
Right, I think, but I'm trying to go back on what you did say the last time. And you did say that the reason why the chart budget was in here is because community engagement was part of general budget. The general government budget.
Oh, Madam Chair, Councilor, I believe you're referring to the general fund. Yes, so that is correct. This funding source for the additional funding in the future moving forward for the chart process is coming out of the general fund. Arts and culture is funded by lodger's tax. We regularly, with the initiatives that we have funded either in tourism or in arts and culture, anything that's funded by the lodger's tax revenue source, we want to make sure that we are very strictly following. And if we need to go to the city attorney's office for a legal opinion to make sure we are sticking to what is allowable when we are using that particular funding source. So for any of the future commitments to chart, that will be funded out of the general fund.
Okay, I think that's where I misheard. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I don't see any other hands up. I'm assuming therefore we are ready to vote. If we could get a roll call, please.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
and Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our work for today. Counselor Cassett, you get a 28-minute break before your next meeting. I'm glad you get some sort of break. Sometimes we move from one meeting to another, and it's not always easy. And given that you're not feeling well, I'm glad you're going to have a little break. Anyway, thank you to the committee for your work today. We will see you tomorrow at 1:00, and we are adjourned.